toi, monsieur.
I'm afraid I have to be left out of that conversation when people start speaking foreign languages.
But you said you were going to. You said
that are unknown to me.
You promised last week that you were going to learn another language and that you were going to come and shock us. I mean, you learned Russian, vodka, and yet, so you're done. You're going to learn another one.
No. Caviar also.
Oh, caviar. So you learned Russian, so you need to learn another one.
Comment servers.
And you think French is a good language for me to learn?
Yeah.
But I know French. Oui.
It is the language of love.
Yeah. And no.
And love makes the world go round.
And qu'est-ce que c'est?
Bas.
Very good. Hey.
And ooh la la.
Oui. There was the search engine ground to a halt. Yes, I tried to bring another word, but we kept popping up.
So we are good. It's not a bad one, right?
No, it isn't.
Okay, welcome to the show. Today we'll be talking about a number of things. We can see that the president's legacy is already being highlighted. This or lack of there. And then we're also seeing the COVID and how COVID is making people billionaires, as expected. That's expected. And then also, there's a small matter of environmental pollution. And residents of Syokimau are up in arms, and they've been up in arms, and the government of Machakos County listened to them. And then the government of Machakos County took some action. We'll be discussing whether the residents feel that the action taken by the government of Machakos County was satisfactory. And also we'll be seeking to get answers from the government of Machakos County by speaking to the governor, Dr. Alfred Mutua, later on. Our friend, the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, Dr. Chibanzi, has gone out publicly to say, you know what, guys, I tested positive for COVID-19. And he has been journaling. So he's been giving out his experience. And we'd like to hear from him today how the journey is. A number of interesting things. And of course, from the position that he is, he'll give us a perspective as well of how things look like countrywide. But before that, let's begin where we always begin. And this is taking a look at COVID-19 and how it's doing around the world. Do you want to start from Kenya or do you want to start from global?
Well, let's start around the world. Well,
Okay.
Let's start around the world, right? So, the numbers, global numbers now at 18,234,936. That's what we're looking at around the world, still climbing 692,794 deaths. The United States, as was expected, crossed the 150,000 mark last week. 4.8, that's 4,813,647 cases now in the US. And as it's being looked at, likely to cross over to 5 million very, very soon. Brazil at 2,733,677. India at 1,804,702. Russia at 850,870. And now South Africa, having crossed the 500,000 mark a couple of days ago at 511,485. Now with 3,000 more deaths since last week, where they were at 5,068 to 8,366 deaths in South Africa. Mexico, some of the lowest numbers that they've seen in a while, with 4,853 cases in the last 7 hours and 274 deaths. So the numbers continue to rise. We looked at Australia a couple of days ago when they were really complaining that, the numbers had reached 258 as numbers that they had, the highest as they had recorded in the last 6 weeks. The numbers still continue to rise, 13 new cases in the last 7 hours, now taking their tally to 17,936 cases. The numbers continue to rise.
So total number of cases in Australia so far, the entire continent of Australia,
The entire continent of
is
Australia.
17,000.
Almost 18,000, yeah.
Okay. Perhaps this is...
We have to also understand that they have a population of 25 million, right?
Thank you. I was
So-
the question. I was going
Yeah.
to say, can we just discuss the population?
Yeah.
The population.
Population.
Yes.
So, small population, comparatively, it's a high number compared to their population.
This thing called population density isn't a problem in Australia.
It's not, because
vast country,
sparse population. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
But you see, when talking about Australia, I think the same argument should be used when we talk about, say, city-states or city-nations like, say, Singapore and Hong Kong. Because we look at the improvements that they have made and the advances they have made, but we don't often discuss the population of those countries.
Yeah.
Because they are few.
They really are few.
They are few.
I mean, I think Singapore's population is under 6 million or something.
It
like
is.
that.
Now,
Yeah.
the population of Lagos is something like 15 million.
Population of Lagos, actually, after the last census, was almost 20 million people.
Okay, they were going to 20. Okay, now here I was thinking it's only Delhi that have reached 20.
Yeah.
So, when you're having this discussion, I think it is
The
important.
population of Singapore, as I'm looking at that, it's 5.8 million.
Yeah.
Yes, they haven't quite hit 6. Yes, and if you look around the world,
It is Nairobi by day.
yes, it is. It is Nairobi by day.
It is.
Surely. Hey, okay. Countrywide?
All right, so let's look at Kenya. Yesterday, 690 cases. Now, Kenya's confirmed cases at 22 million. I'm sorry. How's that for a shocker? Did you see your eyebrows? I'm sorry. 22,053. New recoveries at 58. Total recoveries at 8,477. 5 new deaths yesterday, and total deaths now at 369, with one day having recorded 23 deaths. So if you want to look at, just that, 22,053 total cases likely to rise, and they're looking at an average of 700 cases every 24 hours is what is being recorded in Kenya. Many talks over the last couple of days that now the third global wave is happening, and that third wave is going to take place in Africa, with countries, yes, like Kenya, seeing 700 cases every 24 hours, likely to increase, with South Africa now over 500,000 cases and nearing 10,000 deaths. The North African countries of Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria continuing to gain new cases. We've seen a drop in cases in Nigeria and
Why are they
Ghana.
calling the third wave?
How do you distinguish between wave 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, because they said this. I mean, according to, if you want to quote unquote experts, the first wave took place in Europe, with the high cases that we saw in Italy, Spain, France. The second wave, according to them, took place in the United States and the Americas, North America, South America, what we see going on in South America at the moment. And then now, whether the first and second waves have ended is another different story. But the third wave now coming to take place in Africa, with the high numbers that we see in South Africa, with the continuing numbers.
So where the
that we
epicenter is, that's
Yes.
where they consider the wave.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't consider like China as a wave.
According to them now, that's not even an issue anymore, because China, if you want to even look at the numbers that we're seeing in China, for example, still, under 85,000 cases, 43 new cases in the last 7 hours. The number has stayed steady for the last 8 weeks. So in terms of new cases, they're not really finding anything earth-shattering, if we want to look at it like that. So it could have been where it started and then it spread around the world. But in terms of anything major happening with COVID in China, it's not at the moment.
Okay. So you were here
Yes, we are.
in Kenya.
Yes, we are.
And our neighboring countries, how are they doing?
Now, this is another thing where they talked about it being being about the third wave. There are a number of countries that are occupied with other things and are not bothering to report, are not going to deal with COVID. That if you actually took what are those things called that we used to use in high school?
Swabs.
No. Magnifying glass. Right? Took a magnifying glass and looked through, you'd be able to probably find more cases of COVID that are being reported. And that's another thing. They're saying that some countries are not even bothering to do the due diligence and find out what's really going on, within their borders. So if you really did look around and see, you'd probably find that there would be many, many more cases of COVID than are being reported or investigated.
This has actually become a statement of fact that even as you look at the numbers and you compare them with whatever else is done to sort of like give an indication of what the real numbers of those who are infected are, you realize that for all the numbers that you hear being mentioned, the likelihood of them being a much higher reality than what is being mentioned is actually considered now a fact.
Right.
Yes. Because if those numbers exist and they have been tested, and you look at how the infection spreads, then it can't be that it's only those numbers that you have. It must have extended elsewhere.
There's more.
Yes.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Are we seeing a rise in the number of deaths in those countries?
Well, I mean, how the...
Like you see, what we've seen in terms of graveyards and cemeteries and what's happening in the cemeteries, the number of burials would be increasing in the community.
Sure, I mean, if you just want to take an example like Tanzania, okay? Even if that's an interesting question, because if you wanted to say, all right, maybe there are more cases of COVID, and if that's so, then you could equal and say then some people may be dying. But we've not heard reports that there are, mass burials, for example, in Tanzania. We've not heard. Doesn't mean it's not taking place. No. We just have not been...
Actually, what is strange about this... The increased number of infections doesn't necessarily correspond to the number of deaths. No, not necessarily.
There could be people who are living with
If you look at Kenya, for instance, if I were to look at the figures that have been given to us by the Nation, front page, they see the fatality rate for July stood at 1.8%, as compared to 2.5% in June. In April, the death rate averaged 5.1%, and in May it was 3.4%. So it seems to be the numbers are going down. So essentially, the fact that people are being infected or are testing positive, there seems to be a corresponding ability to actually contain the infection so that it doesn't bring about death.
Is that so?
Look at the figures. I am not quoting myself.
Yeah. Again, say again. Those figures.
Let me read. The fatality rate for July, this month which has just stood at 1.8%, as compared to 2.5% in June. In April, the death rate averaged 5.1%, while in May, it was 3.4%. Headline, if you look at just page 1, front page, the information is there.
But also, it's 5.1% of fewer cases, or 1.8% of higher cases. For example, last month, almost 200 people died of COVID-19 in just a month alone. That 1.8% actually translates to 200 people. If you compare that to 85 people who had died in June and 44 who had died in May. So in a span of 30 days, 3 months ago, 44 people had died of COVID. Last month, 200 people had died of COVID. It's high.
You see, the argument that I think has also been forwarded when looking at these figures is that some of these numbers are cumulative. Meaning, when you say June or July, that is when it was reported. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in that month alone, this is the number of people who actually died. There has been that debate. So when you give us these numbers, and we've raised it here, are you saying that those are reports of people who actually died in that month? Or is it those who died, we're reporting at that point in time, these are the numbers that we're reporting now?
I think it's a cumulative one. When they say in the last 24 hours, we've reported X number of deaths. So by the time you're getting to the end of the month, it's the number of deaths that have been reported within those 30 days. Because remember, they report deaths on a daily basis, just like they report cases on a daily basis.
Again, the issue of reporting deaths on a daily basis, again, there is need to understand, is it that those deaths occur on that day, or is it that that's the day on which it is being reported?
I think that's the day on which it's being reported. But the way they put it is that in the last 24 hours, these are the deaths that have been reported. So most likely, even if the reporting has been delayed, it's not beyond 72 hours.
You see, as far as I'm concerned, if figures do not relate to something that is easy to understand and to relate to, then figures just remain figures. Why am I saying this? How dangerous is the spread of COVID to us? If you look at the headline on the Star, and they say, big names that have fallen to COVID, essentially, it is saying, let's highlight COVID and let us realize that it targets everybody. No one's left out of this equation. Now, it makes it perhaps a little more pointed when you mention names that people know, people who are considered to have been some heavyweights within society. That, to me, isn't really the problem. The problem is what is the likelihood of even more people, forget the big names, what about the names that we don't know, the names we don't recognize? How many are likely? Those who are dead are already dead.
Yeah.
The likelihood, given these numbers, because that's where the danger lies, not in what has happened. What has happened, we've understood. So that, to me, is really, if you ask me, that's where the issue is.
The unknowns.
The unknowns.
All right, 17 minutes after 6. This is the situation. Room Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to take a break, take a look at the weather, and then we will hear today's proverb from CT Muga and start off the week with a look at the big stories of the weekend and the stories that will shape the conversations this week. Good morning. Keep it right here.
The weather with Spice
Monday
FM.
Morning, let's see what's in the skies today. Highs of 23 and lows of 11 is what we'll experience in mostly partly cloudy conditions throughout the city. In Nyeri, 11 degrees and partly cloudy today. We'll see highs of 22 and lows of 10. Nakuru, clear skies at 11. We'll see highs of 22 with partly cloudy conditions later. Eldoret is clear at 13. Highs of 19 with thunderstorms promised for later and lows then of 11. It's 19 degrees and partly cloudy in Kisumu. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 18. In Kakamega, it's mostly sunny at 18 with highs of 26 and lows of 15. Malindi is partly cloudy at 23 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 22, promising to be a wet afternoon. Mombasa is clear this morning at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 22 with showers expected later. Let's step out of Kenya where it's 19 degrees in Kampala, highs of 24 and lows of 18 degrees, partly cloudy conditions throughout this Monday. In Dar es Salaam, it's 22 degrees and mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 30 today and lows of 21 with showers throughout the day. In Joburg, at 7 degrees, clear skies with a few clouds here and there. Sunny conditions, however, for most parts of the day with highs of 21 and lows of 4. Lagos is cloudy at 24 degrees and is promising to be just so throughout the day, with highs of 29 and lows of 23. Let's take a look into Paris, where it's 22 degrees and sunny conditions this morning. There's a thunderstorm warning for orange, however. And today it's going to be very warm in the city of love with highs of 39 and lows of 20. London, 19 degrees and sunny conditions. A warm summer day as well. Highs of 34 and lows of 17. And to wrap things up in New York, where it's Sunday night, but they're experiencing thunderstorms right now, and they'll wake up to more rain with highs of 27 and lows of 22.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. mornings
Okay,
done
at
right.
22 minutes after 6, this is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at the headlines, but before we do that, C.T. Muga, today's proverb.
Today's proverb falls in that category of African proverbs.
These proverbs of yours have now all become
It is
that category of African proverbs.
It is a season for African proverbs. The sun does not forget a village because it is small.
It will visit every village.
Yes, let me repeat. The sun does not forget a village because it is small.
Okay. Who's small? The son of the village?
The sun is just the sun. Doesn't increase in size, doesn't reduce in size.
Mm-hmm.
And it spreads throughout the earth. It is the village that is likely to be small.
Okay.
As compared to a bigger village.
Everybody gets their fair share of sunlight.
Everybody gets their fair share of sunlight.
Good enough.
From what you call an equitable benefactor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The sun has a very good formula.
It does. Doesn't matter.
Should give that to the Senate.
What you will find is the rain.
Yeah,
The rain has similar qualities. Doesn't choose.
Doesn't choose.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't choose a path. Sometimes the rain does that, man, city. There are times when you hear villagers saying, "We saw the rain move. It was coming and then we saw it."
I believe the culprit they should be referring to is the wind.
As far as they're concerned, that rain did not come. It was influenced by the wind, whatever influenced it.
But it didn't get to them.
It didn't get to them, so they start complaining.
You see, in the same manner, you could say the sun perhaps was obscured by some clouds.
By clouds.
Yet the sun was where it usually is at. But the presence of the cloud now changes that whole dimension, does it not?
True. Let's take a look at the big headlines today. What do you want to start and do?
The corona billionaires. Why some businesses are thriving. This is something that's covered on both the Nation and the Standard today. Innovators, manufacturers, contractors, and e-commerce entrepreneurs are collectively sharing the biggest part of the coronavirus billions as the world moves away from traditional ways of doing business. So, in Kenya, some companies have moved from struggling entities to banking hundreds of millions of shillings in a matter of months. Against the backdrop of businesses shutting down and millions of people losing their livelihoods as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, a select group of businessmen locally and globally are turning their fortunes around amid the gloom. Innovators, manufacturers, contractors, and e-commerce entrepreneurs are collectively sharing the biggest part of the coronavirus millions as the world moves away from traditional ways of doing business. In Kenya, some of these companies have moved from struggling entities barely breaking even a few months ago to banking hundreds of millions of shillings in a matter of months. For this select group of companies, there has been no blessing larger than the pandemic since March 13th, where Kenya announced her first confirmed case of the virus. The Nation goes into this story a little bit more with some more detail when they're talking about traders who made millions from COVID. In under 60 days, Kenya secured 223 billion shillings as part of its COVID-19 war chest. Starting today, the Nation is going to reveal the biggest beneficiaries of the coronavirus billions. Now, let's just look at one example.
So one story on the... Okay, just look at the example first,
Okay.
and I'll put in my comment.
And then you pull in. Okay. So, it's a story of, many having started businesses, and we'll go a little bit into the story where on January 22nd, take the case of Ivy Minyeo Onyango, whose story demonstrates how easily Kenya's procurement system can be bent. On January 22nd, Ms. Onyango, barely 30 years old, walked into the company's registry. This was weeks before Africa reported its first coronavirus case. She registered Killing Limited. Several weeks later, her company was handpicked and handed a 4 billion shilling offer to supply hundreds of thousands of personal protective equipment. Each kit was to be delivered at an inflated cost of 9,000 shillings from then market price of 4,500 shillings, according to a different story. The complete kit costs includes N95 masks, bodysuits, goggles, waterproof shoe covers and gloves, and she was supposed to supply 450,000 of these. You want to do the math, your calculator might just conk out. The fact that her company had no proof or record of ability to supply such a big tender on such a short notice did not bother KEMSA executives, who are now under the radar of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. On paper, at the company registry, Ms. Onyango is the sole shareholder and director of the company, holding all the 1,000 shares. All went well until something went wrong between her benefactors and top executives at KEMSA. The deal would later leak to investigative agencies, but it was too late since the agency had already put pen to paper and the ink had dried. KEMSA boss Jonah Manjari would then quickly take a hasty retreat to cancel the deal after it became clear that Kilig had been given more than it could chew. And this is just one example of things going south.
Okay, this is where I wanted to say. So the standard story is basically pointing to the positives,
yes,
right?
It is.
Those that have seen the opportunity, those that are deciding, all right, so what do people need right now? People need soap, people need sanitizer, people need masks and all. And they've gone into that business of providing. Mm-hmm. And then the nation story is looking at the other side. Those that have seen, okay, this is an opportunity. And for them, the big opportunity is how they can skew the tendering process and manipulate the tendering process so that they can make more money from the taxpayer.
You know what?
Same story, different.
The underbelly of this, and what is worrying, is when you look at, say, the face masks, and they say that they procured them at something like 1,300 a piece.
Right.
When in some cases they say the market rate is something like 750, and some say no, it's actually 450. So it is not just inflated, it is overinflated.
So when I read this story and I hear about the 150 and the 450, I'm wondering, is it because I didn't see that detail in the story, for example, about the nation? Did the nation go to the person who supplied, initial supplier, maybe the international supplier of this particular kit, and said, this is how much I was quoting in March? And then we can argue and say that the person who supplied to the government inflated. Okay. Because it's inflation based on what?
Okay, so let's go to another example within this story of what the nation talks about, right? And they go to yet another company. It was registered on the 14th of February, 2020. And it was called Shop and Buy Limited, right? What they did, of course, was deal in gifts and such. But then they saw, like you said, an opportunity. Despite being just 4 months old, the company was handed a 970 million shilling contract to supply 100,000 PPE kits, each at an approximate price of 9,000 shillings, earning it revenues of 900 million. The company was also allowed to supply another 100,000 pieces of KN95 masks at 700 apiece. A search at the company registry shows that Shop and Buy Limited is owned by Mr. James Kipketer Chulule. Mr. Kipketer told the nation that his company had done nothing wrong. It was like a dozen others handpicked by the government and invited to supply the kits. He explained that the prices were high at the time because he had flown in most of the items, paying excessive cargo fees of about 2,000 shillings per kilogram. And they quoted the 9,000 per kit because they were importing by air, and a kilo at that time was going for that much. Today, it might look inflated, but at that time, that was the price. KEMSA is now at a loss because the prices of some of those kits have dropped since, and we are now importing by sea.
You see? So, I see what the story is saying, and I completely understand what the story is highlighting here. I'm just getting the feeling that, for example, when we say that we're buying N95 masks at 1,300 shillings against the market price of 700 shillings a piece, I'd like to know where the 700 price is coming from. Who was selling at 700 a piece at that time? Don't just say market price, because this is not the only source of information that we've had talking about an inflated or a highly manipulated supplies market.
True, but also of significance is this. If you're buying in bulk, do we have information that indicates what, see, you're talking, it's being reported as though one piece costs that.
Yeah.
But if you're buying the quantities that you're buying, surely the price cannot possibly be the same.
Which is why the investigative agencies had an issue with this, because as far as they're concerned, it can't be that you're buying 100,000 pieces, for example, and the price is the same as one. If you're buying in bulk, the prices then should have been lower. And that's the argument. But from this, and according to the records that they were able to get, you're buying 100,000 at a price of 1,300 per piece. And that's what didn't make sense.
Not only that, but you see, this particular news item comes against an interesting backdrop of information and news about not just PPEs, but how the procurement system in this country has been manipulated over the years.
So the bigger thing here is that is the manipulation of our procurement. For example, a company is registered and within 2 months it's already won a tender without.
And yet we understand that there are certain basic requirements that the government has before you can actually be offered such a tender. They usually want your bank statements. They want audited accounts. They want
a history of how you've done business.
Surely they also want to know whether you have the capacity.
We have
to
the
do
capacity
this.
to supply.
Now, one of the things that also came to the fore is that one of these companies was given couldn't, and it had to be withdrawn.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question that is then asked: how do you determine that this particular company should be given
the tender?
Yes.
27 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic. What's happening on the roads this early Monday morning? It's the Monday after a long weekend. So on Friday, we had no issues on the road. Let's see about today. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, we're definitely going to have a mess this morning. Let's take a look at Thika Road for now. The flyover at GSU headquarters is being worked on just now. And for you to wake up to, unfortunately, this morning, there was no prior warning. Thika Road traffic is going to be heavy this morning. The highway has been closed between Allsops and Survey because of the lifting of the pedestrian footbridge at the drive-in. So only the service lane is going to be in use this morning on your way to the CBD. And I know you're going to wake up to that this morning, but unfortunately, this is the way that it is. So we know that there's going to be epic traffic on that road this morning. If you do find an alternative, share with us so that we can let other people know. The contractor is doing his work also at the Kasarani Mwiki Road, and so that's going to add some crazy traffic this morning. So this is what we're going to be looking at today. We'll take a look at other spots. Outer Ring traffic is busy already. We see that opening up, but where we see most of our attention today is Thika Road. The public notice was given just a few minutes before they started, but hey, we'll do with what we can. Kangundo Road traffic flowing very well this morning. It's a cold morning, however, and we see some fog quite low on Mombasa Road. It's flowing smoothly right now. We'll see how that changes in a short while. Keep it here to find out more information. Let us know also what you see. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter, and we'll try and keep people moving this Monday morning.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, more and more coverage of the big stories this morning. What do you have, CT?
Why young people are succumbing to the virus?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things that is being pointed out by public health experts, you see, information that at the beginning of the pandemic, or at the time when the pandemic became obvious throughout the world, the statistics and the data that was then available indicated that people who are younger, youthful, were not predisposed to the infection or to the effects of the infection as much as those who are older. And that particular narrative has gotten to a point where it is changing, and they're saying that we are witnessing more and more young people succumbing to the infection of the virus.
Mm-hmm.
This was going to happen, and for a very simple reason. Whenever you have, let's call it a pandemic because that's what it is. What is known at the time when it first becomes known as a pandemic, and what is then known 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, is very, very different. Part of the reason is because the number of people who are then exposed to the virus, the numbers are more. And then the demographics of the various groups of people who are then also exposed, again, is different. So when this happens is when you get this sort of information, because, should we say, it is more democratically spread. So you then have information about all the various demographic, all the various groups of people who are likely to come into contact with the virus. And this information, as I see it, is pointing to that, and is saying we are seeing more and more young people. Now, there's something I need to point out here. When reporting on health matters, you don't report on health matters as though you're reporting a crime or you're reporting something on a political rally. There is a need to understand what needs to be emphasized, what needs to be presented. This is why people go to be trained to actually report health matters. If you don't report it correctly, you could actually be alarmist. For instance, you can throw in figures, and if it isn't systematic and it isn't explained well, those figures could have all sorts of meanings that are not even purposed or even intended.
Right.
But the point is this: younger people are now being infected in greater numbers by COVID.
And so they'll succumb.
If the older people are succumbing, remember the group of people who are known to have high blood pressure, diabetes, those ones were told, my friend, frontline, forget infection, death.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're the leading. Okay? But now younger people are being told, my friends, you too, and you're not immune.
You're saying it was bound to happen. That's what I'm
Yes.
I'm getting to that. I'm wondering.
This is why it was bound to happen. I'm talking about Kenya specifically. We are a youthful nation in the sense that the bulk of our population is young.
Yeah.
So if you have a pandemic and you talk about its spread, the people who are most likely to actually be reached are those who are in the majority.
Yes.
And that is the youth.
Yeah.
That really is it. That's really the point I'm trying to
But that's not the story. The story is that younger people, more and more younger people are dying.
Yeah,
And this goes
but
contrary.
Eric, you can't die unless you're infected.
Yes, the issue was not infection. Infection was expected that younger people are going to get infected. In fact,
but not in
that
such
was-
large numbers.
That was the probability was that you have throughout is that the younger people are more, the people who are infected, the bigger percentage is among that younger people,
Yes.
right? The people below 40, is it below 45 or something? That has always been the highest percentage. But the issue was that the younger people are less likely to succumb. And it was now giving that impression to the younger people, false impression, that they are invincible to the virus. And now this story is basically is highlighting the fact that of the people who are dying, we are seeing more and more people who are in that bracket that was considered younger also dying.
You see, if you look at the numbers, if I just follow the trajectory of the argument you've put forth, it still amounts to the same thing. Because if you are more in number, if the demographic representation is more among the youth, then those who are likely to be infected are youth. So again, it follows, if people are likely to die, again, that same group will register a larger number. It's not that it's targeting the youth, it's just that there are more.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm focusing on the infection for the simple reason that if I'm to quote what a certain gentleman by the name of Dr. Bernard Muya, a public health expert, said the youth think that they're invincible and thus cannot get virus. Unfortunately, that kind of perception is misleading. Then Changes Tact has another statement. The health-seeking behavior is also very poor. Which group of Kenyans has what you may call
a healthy health-seeking
behavior? Which one?
None, eh?
Not really. And what you need to look at is why. Accepted, it is poor. But why? Why is it that people do not prefer to go to hospitals to be attended to? Why do they do that? Why do they prefer to self-medicate? And the reason for many people is very simply this. When they look at the priorities that they have within their families, unless it is death threatening, it's threatening death, it's not a priority.
It's not.
It's really quite simple. It is not a priority. Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Something a little bit more sweet. Inside the state's mega plans to revive the ailing sugar sector. Plans by the government to turn around the fortunes of the state-owned sugar factories involve waiving of debts of struggling millers in Western and Nyanza regions and the leasing out of 5 millers. The revival strategy involves addressing the litany of management woes that has crippled operations over the years, the waiving of debts amounting to billions of shillings, and ensuring availability of adequate supply of raw materials to sustain milling operations. The government has indicated it has written off debts amounting to 62 billion shillings by the sugar factories. The millers targeted for the long-term lease model, which will transfer the rights of use of each factory of the lessee, are Chemelil Sugar, Miwani Sugar in receivership, Muhoroni Sugar in receivership, Nzoia Sugar, and South Nyanza Sugar companies. So while touring the Western region 2 weeks ago, Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya asked MPs to support and pass the sugar bill, sponsored by Kanduni MP Wafula Wamunyenyi, which he said he would give a clear roadmap for the revival of the sugar sector if enacted. So many things in line here. Removal of debt, aligning of the factory, rather aligning of the sector, and the bill now, which gives a clear roadmap of how it will be revived.
Bank.
My next question was, with all these elements being put in place, do you then see the resurrection of the sugar sector?
No, because the very thing that caused the collapse and caused the problem is not being discussed. The importation of sugar into the country beyond what the country requires or needs.
At a price cheaper than that which the millers are actually
able to mill. Yes, because so long as you have that gaping hole, and has been there for the longest time. Remember, we do not produce within the country sugar that meets the demand that we have. Hence, the need to import. Now,
and when you say we do not, before you go on, City, because the country does not produce the amount of sugar that it needs for the population.
We don't meet the demand.
Why?
That question I cannot answer. I simply know that we don't have the capacity. It's not complicated. We have a demand that outstrips what we produce. It's just that simple. Yes. I'm making the statement of fact. That the factories work. Let me start perhaps on a more cheerful note. That these factories are extremely old and outdated, sincerely, and are not competitive. That we have neighbors like Sudan, yes,
Somalia even,
Kenana, where they have factories in the hundreds of thousands of acres and the economies of scale work in their favor. That down south we have neighbors who produce sugar in similar scales. The truth of the matter is that our sugar is not competitive. It's not competitive. Yeah. And the only market that our sugar can actually thrive in is in ours if it is protected. Meaning the government makes a deliberate effort to ensure that
Kenyans consume expensive sugar.
Yes. Or they subsidize it so that we consume our own sugar first. Then when we know we finish consuming our sugar,
take from outside.
Yes. That's what subsidizing does. It means you're not competitive, but the government ensures that there is a larger picture of, that these people of ours in this country, who this is their livelihood, so let's support it. The example I like giving is like the rice growing in Japan. Rice growing in Japan is expensive. But the Japanese government is not going to allow any importation of rice before its own rice is consumed.
Eat your own.
because their neighbors, whether it's Vietnam or China, they produce rice in a much cheaper way. But that rice is going to be taxed the living daylights out of, for the simple reason that they're protecting their product. Sugar in this country is not protected. All these fancy things that they're talking about will not work. It will not work if you don't deal with the real problem.
So if we protect, does it mean that the consumer will be getting sugar more expensively?
No. When you protect, it means that the consumer actually gets the product at a cheaper rate. We produce it. Ask yourself, what is it that makes our sugar expensive? And most of the things that make the sugar expensive are within the controls of the government. The government can decide what it wants to do, how it wants to do it. Remember, you're talking about an industry that in the 1960s and 70s was thriving. Into part of the 80s, it was thriving.
Yep.
Genuinely thriving, and sugarcane farmers were well-to-do people.
And then it didn't catch up with the times.
It didn't. And these factories were government-owned, but they still made money. And the government still made money from it. And then suddenly the importation of sugar overtook the production of sugar. So, there you are.
12 minutes to 7 o'clock at the Situation Room continues. We're looking at the big stories of the day. Keep it right here because we'll be back after this short break to look at other stories from the country, from the region, and from around the world. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, 10 minutes to 7. The Situation Room conversation continues. Other big stories in the papers this morning from around the country, where cemeteries lie idle but the dead fight for space. This is given two-page coverage in the Standard. A decision to buy land for public cemetery by Kakamega County shines the spotlight on the state of graveyards, even as COVID-19 infections soar and deaths registered daily. So this is talking, basically it's the mix of two issues. One is cultural practices and how, what we've been doing with the final rights of our loved ones, and what the government has been doing in terms of securing public cemeteries. For example, this story says, Kiambu has the most public cemetery burials because of the cosmopolitan nature of its towns, such as Ruiru, Kiambu, Kikuyu, Thika, Limuru. Kiambu CEC for Health, Dr. Joseph Murega, says the county is yet to establish the acreage of combined public cemetery and percentage of usage. In very many of these urban areas, you find that because you do not have space to go and bury your loved ones, you will bury them in a public cemetery. Mm-hmm. In very many rural areas, because you've got land, you will bury people in your ancestral land.
Yeah.
Now, with the increasing subdivision of land, people are finding that they also don't have places now where they can bury their dead. So they need now to start going into public cemeteries. how many of these former municipalities, now counties, have space still set aside for public cemetery?
I see you have, then you probably will have a mix and match with, what needs to be done vis-a-vis the traditional. Because, for a lot of people, like you said, and in rural areas, it's that you bury your kin on your ancestral land.
Yep.
Usually behind your home, within your homestead, this kind of thing.
Yep.
And so now people are going to be forced to go and bury in public land.
By the way, the evolution of burials is really very interesting because in some parts of Kenya, I'm referring specifically to my neck of the woods. For a very, very long time, a man was buried in his house.
Sorry?
Yes, I knew that would get your attention.
Okay.
Meaning, if someone died, they would actually dig up. You had a hut, really. It would be dug up. You'd be buried there. It was your house after all. And you see, and once you're buried, of course, no one would ever inhabit that house again. And most of those structures were mud, walled, grass thatched. So in time, nature would take its course.
Yeah,
yes,
and the thing would crumble.
And then it would be a small mound, and your body would get absorbed into the earth, and that would be that. It's with time that people now started talking specifically of burial places. But if, for instance, say you are a lady and you died and you hadn't been married, then there was a specific place where you were buried. Okay? If you are a mother in that home, there was again a place where you were buried. So this is where, and usually it was next to your house, not far away.
Yep.
Now, over time, and this is where now the population increase now becomes important, people realize that perhaps you need to designate a place where you will bury people. And also, you follow the example of what our friends in the West have done. They are the ones who came up with this idea, but don't think that their burial rights were any different from ours at an earlier time. Not that different.
It has evolved with time as well.
These things evolve with time. So if you're talking about evolution of time and the population, then perhaps we need to consider, must you bury the whole body or can you cremate? It's a question that must be asked.
And also, because of this whole thing that we have about burials and burial sites, county governments, even governments, are finding it difficult to procure more land for burial because communities are complaining. I mean, no. You cannot bring
dead people
a cemetery here.
You do not bring a cemetery here.
In fact, even people who try,
dead people.
It's dead people. People who've tried to go into this, to venture into this business, find it very difficult. There's absolutely no way you can say that you're going to be sold land and then your neighbors agree that this is going to be converted into a cemetery.
They will
not agree. It's the whole heebie-jeebie aspects that people bring into all of this, and they don't want to have to deal with the cemetery, in proximity to a school or a shopping center, and then, a stone throw away is a cemetery. Nobody wants to deal with that.
But it's not just here. Even in the West, it is development that has caught up with, should we call it grave sites or cemeteries?
Yep.
They were far away.
Yeah.
They were.
They were not next to any. They were a distance away from human habitation. Yes.
Even people who bought private lots and such, they were not, next to their fhomes. Like you say, they were far away. So they would travel to bury their
Humankind has always had a certain manner or a certain way in which they look at death and the way they treat death.
Yeah.
And there is no community on this planet that doesn't have myths and interesting views, not just pertaining to death, but life after death or the perceived life after death. So this is not something that is going to be dominated by logic.
The other thing, though, is how we also treat those cemeteries.
Yes.
So even in those that are buried within their pieces of land, there's something that happens. So it's just fenced off, it overgrows. I mean, nature just takes its course.
Yeah.
Nobody tends to that grave.
No.
Nobody. You just, if it's overgrown, then you say, okay, we need to cut the grass a bit. But that's it. If you compare that to what we see, for example, at the War Memorial Cemetery on Gong Road, where for very many years that is beautiful piece of land. Go to right across Langata Road and you see what's happening. Go to any public cemetery.
By the way, is this really true? Because I've heard this and I'm not certain because I don't have information to confirm or confound it. that one of the things that they do at Langata, depending on how deep that grave was, you can be buried on top of someone.
Yeah.
Oops.
It's true. It is true.
Oops.
Yeah.
You can imagine how
Because they
big
run out
that
of
land
space.
is, how many
Oh,
burials
that-
are
Yeah.
conducted at Langata on a daily
that
basis.
land
So
is
you can
massive.
be sure that we are doing a second round. Something happens. There's a photo here of the graves at Mamboleo Cemetery in Kisumu. You just look at that picture and you can tell, well, this is a desolate piece of land. Yes, there are graves there. There's some tombstones there. Nobody takes care of them, right? Same thing in the Nakuru North Cemetery, filled up in 2010.
By the way,
Full.
You notice of interest, Eric, in the days when we had a municipality, this was actually, it was a function of the municipality to maintain these graves.
Yeah.
Because you see, you don't just bury, you pay.
You pay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the understanding was that it would be maintained. But somewhere along the line, where the problem arose, I think, was when a time when we decided to desecrate these sites and we realized that given their proximity to town, they could be put to other uses,
Yep.
like putting up buildings.
Yep.
And we've had cases of very important people in this country being caught up in sagas where they were supposedly allocated government land and it turned out to have been a cemetery.
Yeah. So it's our whole outlook towards it. And you raised a big issue here of people starting to consider cremation. It's not an easy conversation.
It must be considered because you see, in the absence of, say, for instance, a coffin, if you are simply laid as you are wrapped in a cloth on the earth, the truth of the matter is that with time, you will actually join the soil from which you supposedly came. You will join that soil and become part and parcel of it. Yes. But there are those who argue that people who are buried that way, that the burial places where people are buried in such a manner, they turn out to be some of the most fertile places.
They're very fertile grounds.
Very, very fertile places where you had all manner of wonderful things growing.
Yeah.
So essentially, now this one may be a bit indelicate, but I will say it all the same. The suggestion is that you become good manure.
Bas.
Wow.
Top of the hour, CT, just remind us today's proverb.
The sun does not forget a village because it is small.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It is a just and equitable benefactor.
Okay. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here for more conversations this morning at 7 o'clock. Remember, our live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and Twitter and YouTube as well. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, so it seems to be moving slowly. Outer ring between Caltex and Donholm moving very smoothly this morning. Juja Road also now moving a little bit faster. That mess has been sorted out. The police are already on Thika Road this morning and trying to make things easier for people. And things are now flowing smoothly. We're likely to see another traffic build-up right in a few minutes or so as everybody then does wake up and get themselves on the road. Let's look at other parts now. Coming off of Mombasa Road and getting then into the CBD, moving very well until you get to around Nyayo Stadium roundabout, and then you get onto Huru Highway there. So from Nyayo Stadium all the way through to Westlands, we're going to have some traffic there this morning, but it won't be too much of a mess. We're still going to keep an eye on Thika Road. That might turn out to be a little bit crazy, but it shouldn't be too bad. Coming off Langata Road, coming off Gong Road, and then getting to the City Mortuary roundabout using Bagadi Way from Langata Road should not be too bad either. Coming off of Westlands and getting to the Westlands roundabout also isn't too terrible as you then get into the CBD. We'll see what it looks like in about half hour or so, but for now you should be fine. Let us know what it looks like in your neck of the woods. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room,
It's
the
2.5
only
minutes
way to
after
start
8
your
o'clock.
day.
Not 8, it's 7. It's still early. 7 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the Situation Room, broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi. Mombasa, we are on 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. Worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke, and now for the next 2 hours, also on KTN Home. Welcome to our audience on KTN Home. In the room is Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga. We want to talk about the basics that any government should be able to do. In fact, this is something that is so universal. It's contained in development goals of the United Nations. This is provision of basics like potable water. What is potable water, C.T.? It is not water that you can carry.
Why don't we use a term that is easier to understand? Safe water, as opposed to unsafe water. Because water may be available, but not all of it is safe, meaning it is free of any contaminants. It's free of diseases. It is something that you can utilize for your personal consumption without any undue or unwanted effects. Now, for water to be made available, you probably need to consider that a very great number of the conflicts that we have in the world revolve around this one commodity, water. It is a resource that's available, free, meaning you find it. It's there. But the management of it and ensuring that people actually have the full range of benefits that water can actually bring about it, this seems to have been a challenge for very, very many countries. Why do I say this? If you consider, for instance, that one of the problems that Kenya has been having since last year has been one of flooding. It cannot possibly flood unless there is more water than you know what to do with. If you look at the problems that are now being discussed between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, it is water. We call it the Nile, but it is water. If you look at our own country, in the northeastern part of the country where there are constant conflicts, it arises from water that they need for their livestock. And yet, for there to be a fight, it means that water exists and everybody wants a piece of it. For the longest time in this country, municipality laws required that every structure that was put up within the boundaries had to have a water collection facility. It was a requirement. I don't know where it went, but recently, last week I was reading the papers, it has come up again and it's under discussion, and they're saying we must learn to harvest water. But that's just water harvesting it. We are told, and we know from public health practitioners, we know the figures. 88% of many of the waterborne diseases on this planet are caused because of unsafe water. Children under the age of 5 and the deaths that many of them experience is as a result of this unsafe water, as I call it, water full of contaminants. So it then begs the question, if indeed water was provided and it was available and it was safe, then does it therefore mean that these percentages we speak of could be a benefit as opposed to being the curse that is presented to be? That is a question that perhaps we should consider.
But why is it difficult to provide water? And this is a global thing. It points to something. It points to some scarcity of some sort.
I think
because you said that,
yes,
water is something that we have in plenty.
We do.
Maybe not.
We do. We do have water in plenty. Do you know the percentage of the earth? I'm talking about water you can consume. Land, as we know it, is a very small proportion of this planet. The vast portion of this planet is actually water.
Yeah.
70%.
Yes, and what is odd about water is even if you look at the human body and you look at the blood that runs through your body and which is the lifeline of your human body, the percentage of water in that blood is again almost a similar percentage. Meaning, water is a lifeline. Now, the question you ask is, if it's available. Now, does that not bring us back to the appropriate management and use of this particular commodity? Because if it's there, all commodities, by the way, on this particular planet, all resources are finite. There's no resource that has an endless supply to it. It must be utilized properly and appropriately for it to actually benefit us now and in the future. But perhaps you should tell me, what did you have in mind when you asked the question, Eric?
Now, I'm asking that because it's pointing to some fact that there is an issue with supply of clean.
Is it supply
water,
or the management of it? Because the management is what brings about clean or safe or unsafe.
Both management and supply of clean and safe water, right? Because that's the reason why it becomes a global conversation. You know, a huge percentage of the global population does not have access to this clean and safe water. It is not just in certain parts of the world, it's across all parts of the world. There are areas that you will go and you'll find that there's a problem with provision of clean and safe water. So what is it that causes this to happen? It must be something to do with availability. And the other thing now would be where you come in and raise the issue of management, raise the issue of cost, raise the issue of shifts in population. So you have a population here that requires a lot more water than is locally available. So you've got to move that water and reticulate it long distances. All that contributes to somebody not having access to clean, safe water in a day.
I believe the government of Kenya understands this. If you look at all our counties, they all have water boards. You have departments, you have sections within those governments whose function is actually to simply ensure the very thing you've mentioned. In fact, of interest, the water board that manages Nyeri County won an international award. Yes, it did.
The Water Services Company.
Yes. They're the ones who actually manage and ensure that there's... Meaning, they've gone about the very thing that Eric is talking about. They've gone about it in a way that has caught the attention of international organizations that deal with the management. Remember, by the time you even have national, international bodies dealing with this commodity, it means it's been long understood just how important water is. Even as we bring in this discussion, I'm talking about it because a lot of the solutions that we keep talking about and seeking for healthcare are embedded in this very same product, this same commodity, water, and which we actually have.
Okay. So then I hear us saying then that, the woes that we face over and over again, be it in Kenya or different parts of the world, can actually be sorted out if the proper management and the proper attention then is given to it. So whereas scarcity might be an issue in some certain parts, it's not the scarcity that brings out the problem, it's the management of that resource that brings the problem. And that governments can actually, if they wanted to, if they had the will and they had the desire to make sure that this commodity, as it were, then is available to all, that they actually could.
Yes. There's a conflict always arises, and that is the conflict between what is commercially viable and what universally should actually be made available for people to enjoy. For the longest time, solar power was considered useful, good, clean, but expensive. Wind the same. Why? Because the narrative was you needed to use oil products for the production of etc., etc.
Yeah.
Water power was considered clean. Yet again, the discussion for the longest time was, why is it that things that are available like the sun, like the wind, why are they not being harnessed to ensure that they benefit mankind? That debate between what is commercially viable and what is commercially dominant and what should benefit mankind generally, it has always come to the fore when these things are discussed. Water isn't any different. What, for me, should we say, reignited my imagination with regards to water was a discussion I was having with a friend of mine. And they pointed out very simple statistics and said, if you have clean, what you call safe water available, he said, again, this 70 seems to be a magic percentage of all these ailments that take people to hospital, the diarrheal variety, what you want to call it, dysentery. He said, up until, even if you don't talk about meningitis, it's a list of diseases. He said, you'll grind it to a halt because they are caused, the primary cause is unsafe water. And why it caught my attention, I said, we are talking of PPEs. We're talking again of more PPEs. We're talking about medication. And yet, all these things are necessary when the disease has taken root. And yet, the alternative that my friend was bringing to the discussion was, don't even get sick. Don't even get to a point where you need this. Avoid it. And nothing complicated, water. So I gave it thought and I went and did a little more reading. And I realized what I was being told was actually really very true. So the question is, how would the government make it a priority, a security issue, a priority issue, a livelihood issue, that the management of water in this country has to ensure that it achieves these certain goals? Because we have it. We don't have to import it. We don't have to go through these tedious procurement processes that we keep discussing on this show. Perhaps to understand this, I want to give the example of the country of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country on the planet. Just, if I go by World Bank statistics, 2018, there were around 161 million people. Those are very many people. Bangladesh, we hear of the problems Bangladesh has. We hear of the poverty they have. We read about it all the time. And a lot of it revolves around water or waterborne diseases. But the thing that perhaps is not clear is that they have serious flooding. We think we have flooding. They have really, really serious flooding. And many of these diseases arise from the flooding that occurs there. But if you're talking about the provision of safe water, Bangladesh has an excellent record of this provision of safe water for their people. Because given their population, given the levels of poverty, if this wasn't the case and this commodity was not affordable, the problems that people read about Bangladesh would be infinitely worse.
So what is it that they did? What do they do? So they have, well, because of where they sit, because of their kind of climatic conditions, because of
where they are nestled geographically and so
they have a lot of water
available
to them. So they are able then to take that water and purify it and supply it in the homes without having to transport it vast distances.
No, they don't.
Okay. Now, compare that with Kenya.
You see, when you talk of water...
Sections of this republic where they don't have a river nearby or where the river is several kilometers.
You've gotten to the heart of the matter. Water isn't only available in rivers. We have underground streams.
Yeah.
In this country, you actually have an entire... Well, I wouldn't call it a department or a section, but there is an arm within that Ministry of Water that deals specifically with this. Which means you just can't wake up in the morning and dig a borehole.
Right, you have to seek the necessary approvals to be able to have
Yes, because they understand the configuration and the importance of some of these resources. And I'm saying that the question you ask is an extremely valid one. If we were to ask ourselves the question that perhaps I would ask is, where are our water resources and where are they most found? We know of rivers. Okay. What about the underground resources? All the resources, where are they?
So
please go ahead.
Even more than that, though, is there enough? Is there enough in terms of a resource? And if there is not, then are there mechanisms put in place? Are there even studies, research done to say that? Then from that, which we've been able to find, then we'll be able to go much further to find even deeper resources. But is there enough to be able to do that? If you want to look at Nairobi alone, what have been the issues that have dogged Nairobi and the supply of water forever, whereby we see just over the last couple of weeks that people in an area who did not have water for years running out of their taps suddenly are able to turn on the tap and water comes out of it.
So
I think there are very many issues. There are very many issues here. Is it the availability in terms of a resource, or is it the mismanagement, or the lack of will to actually have something
of all
done
those things
about it?
A combination of them.
So it just then goes across the board. Because again, if you want to look at other countries whereby as a resource it's scarce, Australia is a desert, for example, as is Israel, found in what you call the Negev. serious water issues. But we never heard of the tap turning on and nothing comes out of it. So the management of the very little that they have then is so superb that it becomes examples across the globe.
It goes beyond just management. It goes to the management of the use of water and the understanding of the population of the importance of the use of water and the maintenance of it. So this idea of when you want to wash your hands, you just sort of like turn the tap full throttle. There are places where you're even taught how to have a bath with a cup of water. You know why? They've realized you actually don't need all that water for you to actually be clean. It is taught. Why do I say it is taught? It is understood. It is a scarce resource. It is there. But for us to continue using it ad infinitum, you need to be able to use it in a certain manner. Now, do we actually treat water as a commodity that will come to an end? Like a finite commodity in this country?
No, we don't. I think the whole conversation about water, if you went to the Ministry of Water, I'm sure you'll find very many experts on water who have conducted various studies, who know our, outlay in terms of water. We know where our catchments are, we know where our aquifers are, we know how our rivers are, we know the level of pollution in the rivers, we know what is needed to clean up those rivers, we know what is needed to reticulate water, for example, into Nairobi and supply Nairobi in the entire metropolitan region.
So why is it not done?
That I think is where the crux of the matter is. It's how much importance do we give to this particular resource. When you hear somebody has been appointed water minister, you think they've been demoted. When you hear
because they're going into a sector that...
someone has moved from the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Water, you think, okay, she's been punished. And yet, this is a crucial ministry. If you think about the kind of work that that is under the Ministry of Water, right? The other day we were speaking to the CEO of the Earthy Water Services Board, right? And the kind of work that they do in terms of thinking, so where are we going to get water to supply this entire region that is covered by the Earthy Board? Just Nairobi alone is a headache. Move from Nairobi, go to the neighboring areas within the Nairobi metropolitan region. Mavoko here in Athi River. The Mavoko Water and Sewerage Company does not have its own source of water. It either buys water from the Nairobi Water Company or it gets water from, they try to put up a dam. This is, how do you manage such an organization and ensure that you give it enough water to supply a growing population?
I'd be very interested to know the reasons why, for example, a municipality outside of the metropolitan area then is not, for example, able to put up a dam. Something as simple as that. Because truly, if you're looking at things in terms of infrastructure, putting up a dam is actually quite a simple thing to do that would be able to serve a certain area or a certain population of people. So the question is, why would it then be so difficult? We saw, again, months ago, the people of Kitengela, the residents, having to raise 40 million shillings to be able to set up their own sewerage system. I mean, it's a shame. There's certain things that governments should be able to do for their people. So something like put up a dam, whereby we had flooding in the country, just a few, and that's one of the things that the example that CT has brought up of Bangladesh, that's one thing that they've been able to do. Water as a scarce resource, but guess what? They live in a geographical area where they're prone to flooding. So what have they been able to do? They've been able to dam the water.
They focused.
Literally dam the water. Okay? They dammed the water so that people could be able to use it in the future. Dam the water and pipe it so that people could then actually use it. It actually really isn't rocket science. It's not something that would be too difficult to do. Like you talk about the fact that there are experts who work in these. They understand the overground, they understand the underground, they understand the catchment areas, they understand all of this. They're the ones who tell you, you can dig a borehole here, you can sink a well here, you can do this, that, the other thing. It really would not be that difficult to say that in certain areas, all right, let's have one dam here and let's have one in this other area that can actually feed the people. It really isn't difficult. And I know they'll say, well, there's certain areas where the sodium gradient is higher here than the other. There are things that you can actually do to make sure that water is then fit for consumption or fit for use. It is possible.
At what cost?
And that's what most people say, that we don't have the money to be able to do these things.
No.
Really?
Every ministry has a budget. And what you're saying, it's not just a question of having done the research. We've had partners who've come in, all right? People like the Swiss have come in. We know those Nordic countries have come in.
Bent on water alone. Yeah.
Water, I'm talking about water. We're talking about the Belgians. If you're talking about water and what to do with it, we have more information than we know what to do with. And we even know what to do. It's not that we don't know.
Yeah.
The issue here, as you correctly put it, is it isn't actually given priority. And part of the reason in my mind is that because we take it for granted. We assume that it's a resource that is there, we see it. It's like the sun, we see it. So why should we give it thought? And yet, the beneficial use to which it can actually be put for the citizenry is vast. And so in having that attitude, we miss out on this opportunity that has been staring at us from time immemorial. And the ideas we're discussing, these are not 21st century ideas. They are 20th century ideas, some are even 19th century ideas, and they worked.
As you say that, I'm thinking about the inches and inches of rain that fell in this country over the last 6 months, whereby it was seen that Kenya was in a region whereby it was flooding. The Kenya Met reported to us that, reported many more inches of rain, and it turned into flooding. There were landslides, mudslides all over the country. There was flooding in Budalangi. People had to move out of their houses, all sorts of things. And then I think to myself, it was a disaster that happened to very many people, where they had to move out of their homes. People had to take shelter in schools and such. But it was a waste. At the same time, it was a waste. And it's something that has been talked about for 10 years, easily 10 years or not, or more. Right? So water comes, it goes. And then in a few short months, you're going to have a famine. You're going to have people who are not able to have food because there's no water then to tend to crop that would essentially feed people.
Well, the cycle is well known.
Yeah, we know this cycle. It's
It's
been there
well
over and
known.
over and over
It's well
again.
known.
So even in the management of water, and we talk about sources, the rain is a water. Rain is a water resource. And guess what? As sure as the sun will shine, you know that at a certain time in the year there will be rain. And that's what I'm talking about. For the survival of countries over the next few years, there has got to be a recognition of the fact that if not for new and innovative ways of doing things, then people are not going to be able to survive. And that's just the truth of it. If you still do the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to continually be dogged by the same problems, if not worse.
So your feeling is that there's not enough is being done, or nothing is being done?
Nothing is being done.
Nothing.
What are we talking about? We're doing the same things are being done over and over and
There are
over
very
again.
many water projects in this country.
Which
all
have
right?
yielded
Yes, which have yielded a lot of, benefits. Very many water projects, very many, there was water reforms that started in 2002, 2003. Remember when Martha Karua was Minister for Water? Those water reforms, water sector reforms, water projects, huge multi-billion shilling water projects, some of them that have had to be stopped, like those two dams. Others that have borne fruit. But I think the whole issue is the focus that is given by the main policymakers in terms of water and the prioritization of water. If you went to the Ministry of Water, for example, today, I'm sure we'd find very many, the World Bank and those development partners and the Kenyan government. They've done a lot of research. They've started very many projects, initiated projects, cost millions of shillings for water and sanitation. We have all these goals ourselves as a country to move towards it's a development.
now they're a sustainable
development goal number 6 of water and sanitation. We play a part in all these things. There's a lot of conversation that's happening within very many serious people in Ministry of Water, I believe, and this is just, me looking at things positively. I just think that beyond that, the amount of attention that water is given is where the problems lie. At 26 minutes after 7. Right. Can we just take a quick break and then we continue this conversation shortly? This is The Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. Keep it right here. Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
It's a little bit foggy in Nairobi this morning at 11 degrees. We're likely to see highs of 23 and lows of 10 today. It'll get quite chilly at some parts during this Nairobi morning. In Nyeri, it's 12 degrees and partly cloudy. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 12. In Nakuru, clear skies with a few clouds this morning with highs of 22 and lows of 11. In Eldoret this morning, it's mostly cloudy at 13 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 19 and lows of 11. Kisumu is partly cloudy this morning at 18 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 17. Kakamega will be wet this afternoon, highs of 23 and lows of 16. It's mostly cloudy now though. In Malindi, it's a warm morning at 22 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 22 with showers expected later. In Mombasa, it's mostly cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 22 with showers expected in the afternoon. It's mostly cloudy in Kampala this morning at 20, highs of 24 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam will be partly cloudy throughout the day, highs of 29 and lows of 21. And then looking into Joburg, clear skies at 7 degrees. It'll be sunny conditions all through with highs of 21 and lows of 5. And finally, for now, in Lagos, clear skies with a few clouds, highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
All right, let's look at what's happening on the roads now and see how that has changed since 7 o'clock. Guys are still not taking it as easy as we would like them to, but please remember, Mombasa, a rather thicker road this morning. A section of the road at the Survey of Kenya is open to traffic. These service lanes are also available. Only part of the highway now is still closed off. If you plan to use it, you just know that at that part, the building, the building of bridges is happening there, so traffic is bound to be messy this morning. Let's look at Mombasa Road. Fatal accident at Cabanas outbound right now. Unfortunately, there is traffic building up and the body is on the road, so you want to approach with caution. Police have just arrived at the scene and are trying to take care of that. We'll give you more details as we go along. Let us know what you see as well. Spice of MKE on Twitter, and we will try and keep it moving.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 7:30, the conversation continues. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM in Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We are also live streaming the show on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke, and we are also live on KTN Home. The conversation this morning with C.T. Muga, Nduoko, and Eric Latif is the solutions that we have within our grasp, the health solutions that we have within our grasp. We are battling COVID-19. The World Health Organization has told us the most basic thing that we can do is ensure that you constantly and regularly wash your hands with running water and soap. So let's just deal with that one. Running water and soap.
Yes.
Even the WHO understands that this is something that we cannot just assume that everybody would have access to running water and soap, because it is a UN issue, a UN understanding that a huge percentage of the global population does not have access to running water. In this country, this exposes one of those other things. How many people within the urban areas have access to running water? How many people within the rural areas have access to running water? Safe, clean water.
Whereas it's a conversation, and even with that realization that a lot of people don't have access, it was made a goal, right?
Yep.
And a goal is something that is achievable, it's attainable, you put it out in front of you. That means that there's something that you can do to get yourself there. Look at the game of football. If it was not possible for you to put that ball in the net, it would not be there. It would call it something else, right? So by the time they're saying that these are sustainable goals that everybody should have been able to reach by a certain time, it means that they've taken everything into consideration, and they know that every country, from the greatest population to the smallest, from the richest country to the poorest, it is possible for everybody to have these goals that they looked at. Otherwise, they wouldn't put them there. And no country then would be able to look at this and say, actually, you know what? We as countries also, we agree to this. Because you realize that the possibility is that it is possible to have it done. And that's why I'm saying that, unfortunately, it needs to be peppered with a little bit of seriousness, and priority needs to be given. Because if you look along, you look at this and
you say peppered. I would have hoped you drown it in
just a little bit, because, it's not been done before. Nothing has been done, right?
Yes.
It's not even been regarded. So let's start with peppering, and then we can douse and drown later. But I mean, just a little bit. Because look at what you do in your home. Just look at what individuals do when maybe you're told there's not going to be water for a month. What do? You hold on to the little bit that you have, and then you're able to manage it.
You buy containers.
You buy containers, you do this, that, the other thing. You store it. People now build homes whereby you have the drainage, your drainage, and then you're able to get water from this pipe into a tank. If you can do that on an individual level as a unit, can you imagine then what states and governments then would be able to do with machinery and funds?
Domestic water harvesting
possible.
is actually a policy.
If it's a policy for the
It's
domestic,
actually
can you imagine what
a
it would
policy.
be for national?
And that's why you see
requirement.
it's a
There you
and that's
go.
why you see that very many times you'll hear the government talking about what's the capacity of people to harvest water within their homes. A couple of years back, there was a campaign that was being run by, once again, the governor of Makueni County. And he said, you know what, it's coming to Christmas and we know what you're going to do. You'll seek to send some money to do some shopping for your loved ones back at home. We would like to encourage you to consider one thing. Buy a water tank for the people back at home. Let's ensure that every homestead has at least a water tank. Big campaign, and it bore a lot of fruit. I'm sure today if we spoke to the water CEC in Makueni or the governor himself, he'll tell you the number of people now who have at least some access to water for X number of months a year is high. Because your rain patterns, it has rained, you've collected that water, it is rainwater on your roof, it's clean, it's potable. Now, what have you done? You have alleviated the pain of so many families that would otherwise be walking very many kilometers to go fetch water in a river. Ponds.
What is also of interest is that this matter of water that we're discussing is actually a basic human right.
It is.
You even have World Water Day on the 22nd of March every year. Now, when we talk about human rights, when we talk about and complain about police brutality, when we complain and talk about molestation of children, when we talk about this issue of water falls into that same category.
Yeah.
Same category. And yet, if you consider the influence and the effect that good sanitation and the availability of safe water and what it could achieve if it was given the prominence that it deserves, my friend, it would I would refer to as a public health revolution.
It would be.
And remember,
just sorting out water sorts out health.
Yes, and when you sort out health, you sort out poverty.
Yeah.
Because if someone is taking their meager resources to stay well, it means that the economic status they were in will not change. In fact, the likelihood of it getting worse is very, very high. If that person is well, that person is productive. If they're productive, it means that they can help towards this development of the nation that we speak of. So water has a direct influence on many of these things.
You're right. And I thought about this and I thought to myself something that I had watched on National Geographic months ago. And there are many countries that are now using this as a result of that. Now, in Peru, there are hills above the capital of Lima. They only receive 1.5 centimeters of rain each year. That's about yay high, right? Every year they only receive this. However, they get quite an amount of fog from the Pacific Ocean. I mean, from June to November. So there are quite a number of months. Overcast, right? And obviously fog means that it's dense. So there's an element of moisture that is in the air. And
we all know moisture is water.
There you go. So what have they been able to do? They were able to put up, certain apparatus. So they were able to then collect 2,271 liters of water per day, every day, from this apparatus that's collecting water from the fog in the air. It's not rain, it's not water out of a lake tap, nothing. They're able to collect this water, so they have ample drinking water for everybody. And then even apart from that, they're then able to water their gardens, they're able to grow trees, and water their gardens, and there's ample water for everybody. So what am I talking about? These are people who don't have water. Sam, they don't have water at all. But even with that, there are innovations. And again, if you want to look at Peru, if you want to look at the index of poorer to least poorer they're in that index. But still, they're able to do that. Why? Innovation and creation. Yet again, they're able to do it. So what stops countries who have even flooding in their perennial flooding? And you know now that next year around this time,
we even know what's going to happen and where it's going to happen.
There is something that is stopping countries from doing this. There's something that's stopping countries from doing this. And until you unearth the why, you're going to keep having problems with the what.
How do you take pride in being a regional powerhouse when you can't provide basic sanitation and safe water for your citizenry? What sort of powerhouse are you? Economic powerhouse? Industrial powerhouse? What sort of powerhouse? I thought the entire thinking behind any politician or political maneuvering and government machinery and machination should be to ensure that the citizenry are well looked after. When they're healthy, you're safe. You've got security. When you're healthy, you have a productive workforce. And yet the resource that is required to ensure that something as basic and fundamental as this, we as Kenya, actually we have it in plenty.
It is there in plenty.
Yes. We can't talk about it as a scarcity. When you mention sources of water and underground water, you then bring in the discussion of water tables. I would like someone to tell me which part of this country, even the place which is predominantly desert, tell me if you cannot access water in those places from one of the sources that water is found in. It doesn't have to be a flowing river for it to be available.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't have to be a flood for it to be available. We have places in Northeastern Province where the problems with building toilets for the longest time has been they have a high water table. You can't afford to, because
you'll find water.
You will find water, and if it's a toilet, then you know you're going to contaminate that water.
So then what's the
problem? What's the problem, Citi?
What's the problem?
Oh, it isn't a new problem, by the way. It is a new problem. I don't even want to talk about problems today. Today is Monday. It's been a nice long weekend. I want to talk about reshaping our thinking.
Okay.
I want to talk about the government, instead of running around chasing this tail that it actually doesn't have, to actually, it doesn't. We would see it wagging. And if it wagged, we would see what it would do. We have a situation where our people are dying from COVID. And yet, the thing that WHO has told us, and that Eric has very amply amplified, is what we need to actually stem this tide and this flow of COVID. Running water and soap. Surely this is something the government can provide. Surely. This is not something that is beyond the grasp of the Kenyan government. It isn't. Start there and then let's see how far we go. But let people feel and know that they are being looked after and that their welfare is being taken care of. This is something the government can certainly do.
So you're talking about the present, like right now. What can be done now?
I am talking about the here and now,
all right,
not the future.
And with that here and now, is that not what the government has been attempting to do?
Which government?
This government of ours, of the Republic of
Please
Kenya.
Explain to me how they've been attempting to do this.
Ndu has just quoted what she has read and heard from Nairobi itself, where people are now saying that they have access to water. Okay, so whatever problem was there before, because now we're not dealing with problems today, we're being very optimistic. The fact of the matter is, whoever is in charge of this, whether it's Governor Sonko or Major General Badi, somebody has ensured that some taps that were hitherto dry now are running with water.
Okay.
Somebody has ensured that some areas that did not even have the pipes, all right, now have a borehole that is functioning and people can go there and they can get water.
Eric, you're 100% right, as is Ndu. That's not what I'm referring to. I want everybody to have water. And I want people who are in the low-income areas to have this running water. Not some, everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody has to have this water.
So we are already seeing that happening. Okay.
No,
and
everybody has not gotten the water. And I don't know of a plan to ensure that everybody gets it. If someone can tell me about it, then I will change my argument and maybe I'll discuss something else.
Which is why now I bring that issue to the bigger picture. The bigger picture about what the policies, the water policy in the country says, what the water programs in the country say, what the laws about managing of water say. All those things are very good. And then what the political will of everybody in the country is on provision of water. Because to me, I think the water policy is good. I think the laws have...
they're not good, Eric. They're excellent.
They've been done very well. In fact, even when we got into Constitution, the laws were reviewed to align with the Constitution, so that we talk about, when you say that Nyeri has its own water supply company.
Internationally acclaimed.
Every county has at least one.
They do.
Water management company.
They do.
And above that, there's a whole structure that goes from the very top. The water boards, the water services regulatory board, proper, very beautiful structure on water provision. What happens is now when it comes to implementation, just like everything else in this country.
You see, remember when I talked about it being a fundamental human right? It was perhaps with a biased intention. Even as we agitate for freedoms and what have you, this is something that has to be agitated for, because it is something that is life-saving and life-conserving. And you cannot get, in terms of priorities or on a list of things that are important, can anything get more important than anything that saves lives or conserves lives? I don't think so.
No, it doesn't.
So, even as we champion all these things that we keep talking about, that championing of ensuring that everyone has this safe water, it should also take precedence. Because when we do, it'll be a step. We can say our people have access to water.
Okay.
Safe water.
Okay. Now, let's come back into the issue. When people are campaigning for office, how many people talk about provision of water?
I mean, it seems to be a mantra that everybody takes on at that point.
At that point,
it's something that everybody sings. I will ensure that you have
running water.
Running water.
Right.
Right? So everybody knows that this is something that we need to focus on. And then they get into office and it seems to take a backseat because...
Actually, Eric, it doesn't. We don't ask them to define the running.
Or whether it's a person who's running after water.
Or the taps are running away from the people.
Or there's one tap per village that has running water.
Yes, or that tap keeps moving from village to village at a high speed, so it's running. And I'm being facetious, but anyway, please.
Oh, it's a water bowser that's
that is running.
The focus on water, the last couple of years, for example, we've seen that there's been a lot of talk on developing and expanding the capacity to supply water along the major coastal towns, right? Mombasa, Kilifi, they don't have a proper source of water, and they talk about expanding that supply. Same thing with Nairobi, the Northern Collector Tunnel, right? Same thing about everywhere. But it becomes a conversation just once a year. Everything else is a conversation on a daily basis, but the issue of water just becomes a conversation once a year when there's a scandal, and then that scandal is covered up, and then we move on. So I move from the point of talking about this being an important issue to the government to it being an important issue to all of us.
Yes.
For as long as all of us accept that, kunakuwa na shida ya maji, we wait for a mkokoteni guy to bring water. Na hii maji ya huyu mtu mkokoteni sijui anachotanga wapi. And we leave it at that. We don't follow it up. It shall continue being a problem for us.
Community efforts have ensured that even bridges are built, even roads are built.
Yep.
I'm talking about things I have seen. And in some really remote parts of the country. That same effort, if it's made towards the provision of water, a bridge is useful, water is more useful. The things that safe running water does for you is more than a bridge can do for you.
I think a little bit of elbow grease needs to be applied to this and to actually get something done. Because if you want to look at then what you're able to do as a result of putting in the work at the beginning, it's actually momentous. I mean, it's huge in terms of what you'll then be able to achieve. So many things. I mean, look, you want to say maybe we're making a mountain out of a molehill, but probably not. Health is hinged on this. Look at things like infrastructure and construction. How much water is used for such projects? And how much do they have to then buy for something that could then be readily available and, truth be told, almost free? Look at schools, look at dispensaries, look at hospitals, look at homes, look at a sewage system for new and upcoming buildings or new and upcoming cities and communities. So many things that could be done if you just have a well-managed resource. And that's all that is being asked for. When COVID burst into the scene in Kenya in March, how many politicians were running about buying tanks and saying we've provided water, and you had to put water in a tank?
Yeah.
For goodness sake,
Yeah.
next to it is a tap that you would open and it was dry. We had people in Bungoma buying water tanks for 10,000 shillings and then putting water into them that they had to buy water for not less than 3,000 shillings from a Bowser. Where, for example, you could open a tap and there was no water coming out of it. It should be really at the point where you say, again, a regional giant should be the least of your problems, should be the smallest of the issues that you're dealing with when you're looking at something like this. And unfortunately, it seems that has been something that has been ignored, exactly, not being given a priority. Somebody's put at that seat and it looks as if they've been given been given a demotion.
You know, Eric has mentioned something which he mentions from time to time, and this one, in this particular segment, has to come to the fore. The individuals, the groups of individuals, the communities, and their capacity to stop being victims and to understand that any energy that is put, any thought that is put is for their benefit, really.
Yeah.
If it isn't being done by some supra body that's supposed to do it, what can you do? Focus. The resource is within the area. It's around you.
Yeah.
Some of us live in places where when you hear of a water problem, it's a story. There are people for whom the absence of water is the constant.
It's a constant. I mean, it's a normal thing. You never have water. You always have in your budget for the day, you must have X number of shillings to buy water for the day.
Yes.
On a daily basis.
Yes. And by the way, it's not cheap water.
It's not cheap water. It ends up being very, very expensive.
The question you want to ask yourself, if when communities or individuals or community leaders, if they want to expend their energy, where are they going to get a resource that takes care of your health matters?
Yeah.
It takes care of your economic matters. And it takes care of just your general well-being. Water does all that for you. All these deaths that we have of children under the age of 5, we know that over 70% of those deaths are caused by just unsafe water. There's nothing complicated.
Yep.
We know.
And poor sanitation.
We know. It's not something that people don't know.
They will argue, as they often do, that these are capital-intensive projects.
Actually, not necessarily.
Which you say, well, not necessarily, like you're saying. Not everything has to come from that capital-intensive side. We can start from community level. You can start from community level to see how we are managing the resource that we have, and then incrementally see how best to manage it.
Eric,
it's always thought about it as a capital-intensive project because you want to bring in the money so that you can skew the procurement.
You go to the heart of the matter, Eric, because if you see, there's a term that was used, began in the 1980s, and it has been, it's called appropriate technology.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, if you look for appropriate technology to solve your problem, you'll find it, and it's never expensive. But as you say, our people want to talk about these capital-intensive things, which should be the goal, long-term goal, but it shouldn't be the panacea that we need for solving the problem that we have at that particular point.
At that point, yes.
No.
As we talk about, for example, sinking more boreholes in Nairobi, so that we can provide more potable cleaning water to the densely populated areas, the low-income areas. We are not thinking about how that water can be taken via pipe into people's homes.
Right, exactly. Which
or
should
closer
be
to the people.
Which it should be, because
it is always talking about
right.
at that chief's area, there's a borehole. So you people can all go and queue at the chief's area to
get water.
Get water.
Why can it not be piped?
Exactly. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about now, that it has to be moving, we really have to be moving away from this traditional mentality of saying that, all right, people are going to gather at the mouth of the well, pick up water and then go home. It's got to move. If countries are going to move, and not just Kenya, around the continent, if countries are going to move, the mental way of doing things also has to take a shift. It also has to move, whereby you say, okay, there's a borehole, fantastic. Can you pipe it? That's what the folks in Peru are doing. They're harvesting moisture from fog and piping that water. Who would have thunk it? But it can be done.
Instead of being victims, and Bangladesh, we think we have floods. We don't have floods. Ask the Bangladeshis what they go through, or the Bengali as we call them. My friend, they've managed it. They've harnessed it. They stopped being victims. They stopped waiting for Serikali coup. They said, okay, they will do what they will do when they do it, but what can we do now? You see, my mind also went to all these lovely human rights NGOs that we have who do a wonderful job of highlighting things that need to be highlighted. Does any of you know of an NGO that highlights these issues surrounding water?
in the country.
As a human right.
Or as a human right, as opposed to the provision of it? It would be interesting to find out.
Or the provision of it and the human right element.
Quite a number.
Are one and the same thing.
One and the same. There's an organization called water.org that's a global organization, deals with water, and there are quite a number of water. Actually, on the human rights front, there are a number of organizations. I forget the name of an organization that once interacted with.
And what is the impact that they have made?
At the local level, some impact.
Because that is where it's required.
Community level, right?
Where people don't have, and in towns, in the low-income areas where people don't have running water, that's where it's required. Because those are the same places where you have the heaviest burdens of diseases.
We'll seek more answers from some of these organizations in coming days. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we are going to shift this conversation and bring it back to COVID-19. The Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, Dr. Mwachonda Chibanzi, we spoke with him last week on Monday via the phone on how the country is dealing with COVID-19. By the end of the week, he had gone public and he had announced that he had tested positive for COVID-19. And since then, he has been writing a journal on his journey in the fight against COVID, just trying to shed light on what he's feeling, what he's going through, and what we can learn from his own lesson. We will be speaking to him in the next hour. This is Dr. Mwachonda Chibanzi. He's the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union on his journey in fighting COVID-19. This is The Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. Keep it right here. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
News right here on Spice FM, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on KTN Home on Spice FM. So, the issue of water, as you brought it up, CT, was what we can do to deal with our health problems with what we have.
Yes.
So, it's the government should play its part. We should also play our part. In terms of, don't just say, oh, sina maji. I keep arguing against that argument. You are able to drink water, you're able to cook on a daily basis. Surely, it's about your health.
It's yours.
Find a way of getting access to water and soap and wash your hands as regularly as you can. It's all about that.
You can even take it further, Eric. You see, when you galvanize community activities to ensure that the provision of water reaches a much larger number of people, that same body can petition these very same county people and say, excuse me,
we need water here. Yeah.
This is what we now need. Yeah. We've pushed it up to this level. We'd like you to do ABCD for us.
Yeah.
And you have an MC whom you can push. You have a water administrator whom you can push. So it isn't. It's that victim mentality where you're always suffering. You're the one who's always being downtrodden. You're the one who can't do anything. Yes. That one.
And saying, sasa kama serikali haijaleta sabuni,
sasa
tutoa wapi sabuni?
Tutaosha mkono namna gani? As though the government, you need to go to the government to lease a hand. It's yours.
Yeah.
It's on your body. It's there every day.
I think the mental shift needs to take place across demography. Even if you're talking about leadership, if you were talking about those who are implementation of policy and things like that, the mental shift needs to take place across board. I mean, even when you look at countries that are involved heavily or vested heavily in things like lobbying, it starts from people who have an understanding, knowing that, you know what, if I don't open my mouth, if I don't use what I have, and then, meet with other people of the same of similar thinking, then we're probably not going to be able to take this thing anywhere. It's again of the molecules bumping heads and getting something.
Look at this thing which was even very difficult, multipartism. Look at what was achieved when incrementally push
more and more people.
Push.
Yep.
Till we have a new constitution.
True. We're coming to the top of the hour. City Muga, today's proverb.
I'm going to paraphrase this. The sun doesn't discriminate. When it shines on the big, the large, and the medium-sized villages. There's nowhere that is discriminated against.
Even the micro.
Well, let's take it, even the individual just walking.
Everybody gets the sunshine.
That's what the sun does.
And even when the rain falls.
All right. Keep it right here. Let's take a look at traffic shortly, and then we begin our conversation with Dr. Mochonda Chibanzi, the Secretary General of KMPDU. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so Thika Road is what is giving out those vibes this morning. Traffic is literally spilling over on Thika Road today. You can use the Babadogo route and connect to Juja Road. You should be fine if you use that area. And we realize that the problem is that part of the footbridge is being taken down right around Survey, and that's being done on a Monday morning. Surprise, surprise, but okay. We'll see how that will be taken care of. So for now, it needs to be patiently approached, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get off Thika Road if you're already in that area. Donholm, traffic is bumper to bumper. It's not moving at this point, and it's a bit crazy. Mombasa Road, there was an accident right around Cabanas. They're still sorting that out, and that has contributed to quite some traffic, unfortunately. All right, Waiaki Way, from at about 6:50 this morning, no public transport. There's a problem there, and it's already building up as we can see it. So Westlands, there's an issue. Thika Road as well, a little bit of a problem on Mombasa Road. Hopefully this opens up as we go along. Spice of MKE, tell us what you see, or if you have an alternative for someone, let us know as well. We want to keep it moving. It's a manic Monday. We want to try and get out of it as soon as possible.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It broadcasts on KTN Home, on Spice FM, 94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, Eldoret, 96.7, Nyeri, 90.9, Malindi, 97.7, and worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE. The live stream is on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This hour, let's talk about COVID-19 and the experience of the people who are really battling COVID-19. So we've come from that point where people are asking, so who have you come across anyone who has COVID-19? And now, increasingly, more and more people at least know somebody directly, or twice removed, somebody who has tested positive for COVID-19. Many have tested positive for COVID-19. They are asymptomatic. They have absolutely no symptoms at all. They don't have a headache. They don't cough. They don't have a fever. Nothing. They've just been told that you're COVID-19 and they're wondering,
what's going on?
What do you mean? Others have tested COVID-19 and they have mild symptoms. And those mild symptoms keep ranging from one to the other. And remember from the time when Dr. Mercy Korir told us that it's emerging that one of the symptoms that had not been known before was people lose taste or sense of smell. And now we are seeing more and more people saying that at some point I lost the sense of taste or sense of smell, and I decided to take myself to the hospital. I tested positive for COVID-19. There are those that, of course, are getting the severe symptoms, that they require hospitalization. They go to hospital. They spend a couple of days in hospital, going through the motions and various stages. And unfortunately, there are those that have died. Let's speak to Dr. Mochanda Chibanzi. He is the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. Dr. Chibanzi has tested positive for COVID-19. He went public last week. And since then, he has been saying, well, I've got mild symptoms at best, at worst, rather, mild symptoms. And this is what I'm going through. And let's hear what exactly he's been going through. Dr. Chibanzi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, too.
It's good to hear that you've woken up well.
Yeah, I'd say today I've woken up much better than the last 2 days. I feel much more lighter as opposed to yesterday and the day before.
Wow.
Hello?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so far, what just take us through the journey of how, first of all, you got tested for COVID-19. Was it because you suspected you got some symptoms, or was it a routine check?
Yeah, so this particular test was not my first test. I'd done a test previously that were negative. The last one that I'd done was on the 17th of July. So this one I did on the 27th. That was 12 days later, 29th, 12 days later. Basically because last week on Tuesday, I woke up feeling a bit exhausted. I was quite exhausted and my body I had some muscle aches. I'd been working out over the weekend. So perhaps I thought it was the workout, but then the pain was quite intense and I was like, this is not characteristic of a normal workout pain. And with that, then the entire day Tuesday, I just hung in the house and I basically took the day off to rest, and then felt much better as the day was getting to an end. Around 4 p.m. I was feeling much better, and then Wednesday when I woke up, I was a bit I'd say feeling stronger, but I now realized that I was beginning to develop a sore throat. And since Thursday, Friday
Okay.
was basically...
Doctor, what then made you realize that this was something different thereafter?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to actually. So on Wednesday, with that sore throat and looking back the Tuesday, I was like, perhaps these mild symptoms could be COVID. And because I was planning to travel to spend Eid with the family, I was like, let me take precaution and just do the test again so that I do not get to expose anyone. In my family, the entire family, the entire extended family, because with Eid you get to celebrate. So yeah, so I took the test and then I waited for the results. And when the results came, it was positive. And that's when I took a day to just let it sink in, inform everyone, getting my contacts, all very close contacts, like even the office staff, get them tested the same day, and then let them go home and isolate. Yeah, so that's how I found out that I was actually positive.
Okay. Did you have to think twice about letting people know, people in your close circles, people who you worked with? Did you have to think twice about saying, this is what I am currently faced with?
No, for the close people, it wasn't even about thinking twice. It was about protecting them because given the way the disease transmits itself, just by talking to someone next to you, and given that they equally have families, for me, it was just basically a very straightforward issue that this is my test and I was with you yesterday and the other day. So kindly just isolate in the meantime. You can test now or you can test after a few days just to make sure that you're okay. Yeah.
How are you generally? A couple of days ago, how are you now?
Feeling much better now, as opposed to maybe even by the time that I was going public, especially on that day. It wasn't quite easy. And it wasn't an easy decision to make either. But being a doctor and knowing that there's a lot of stigma around this disease and knowing that people are quite apprehensive and you don't know what to expect, even myself, I think it's good that if we can basically just explain to the people on what they're experiencing. And I've received so many calls of experiences by colleagues, even doctors who've tested positive, and who say they didn't think it was COVID up until they took the test. They were just experiencing symptoms and they were not sure what it is, because I think most of us are now accustomed to fever, cough. You think fever, cough, then maybe it is. But it can start in a very weird way. Especially the excessive fatigue, the muscle aches. You wouldn't think it's COVID, until like experience of a colleague who went like for 4 days, literally 3 days in bed, not able to move because of the pains and everything, and then realized later, okay, fine, let me do that COVID test because everything else was coming out negative, malaria, dengue fever, chikungunya, coming out negative. So, okay, fine, let me do the COVID test. That's the COVID test and it turns out positive.
So, Doc, since then, you've you decided to share your story with the people. You decided to share your experience with the rest of us. And going through, those symptoms, when you are mildly symptomatic, what is it that you feel on a daily basis? How, for example, right now, what are you feeling?
Yeah, so the disease, I'd say, has a waxing and waning effect of symptoms, where symptoms come on and off. So, like yesterday, I woke up excessively fatigued. Today, I woke up early morning with abdominal pains that have now resolved for the last, I had pains for the last 2-3 hours. But I took some warm water, basically. Didn't take any, just took some warm water and relaxed and let it just flow. And it eased the pain, and eventually now I'm feeling okay. So, basically, you can say that, and that's the thing with mild disease so far. The symptoms keep coming on and off. You have this, personally, I have this occasional cough, but it's a dry cough. Initially, I had a sore throat that at some point was like a tight grip on my throat. That was earlier on Thursday, Friday, but then that has since now gone. Then it's just the cough now, on and off, occasional cough. And basically, I'm also asthmatic, so I think that was one of my biggest worries with regards to asthma. It's been very well controlled over the years, but I had to quickly go back to full asthma medication from the long-term controllers, short-term controllers, taking anti-allergies, because I wouldn't want an exacerbation at this point in time, because with the virus in the body, then that would complicate issues. Yeah, so that's how I've been so far. And I'd like to say that, I mean, the mental effect it has on you, even when you get the positive result, is not an easy decision. You have a choice to make between looking at the grimmer picture and the negative side of it, or looking at it from a positive side of it. And that's a decision I made on Saturday when I woke up. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and think about all these negative aspects of this disease. With regards to, one, being a doctor, so I literally understand everything that's happening in my body. I literally understand the molecular side of it, and I keep reading. At some point, I just stopped reading about COVID. I've been reading over the months, but on Thursday, Friday, I was reading quite a lot about COVID, and I was like, okay, let me just stop this reading. Let me take time off reading.
Why?
COVID.
What was that doing to you? I mean, you're a doctor. You are not reading anything new per se, but what was that doing to you psychologically?
Psychologically, basically, it was making me now being excessively conscious and aware of every little thing that I feel in my body, and I start running through the diagnosis and running through what's happening, and I understand totally what's happening with regards to the molecular level, which is things we don't see. And so I felt it was making me a bit more anxious. Though now I've relaxed. Yesterday I had some breathing again, and I think from there is when I realized, these symptoms that I've experienced, a good number of people keep asking, how does a COVID patient look like? What does a COVID patient experience? And so for me, and I thank God that it's mild, and I hope it remains so up until the end, because you have the asymptomatic, those who literally feel nothing, so they don't understand why I have COVID. But at that point, you're literally transmitting the disease, because it's a virus. No one can see this thing. It's invisible, So you and the transmission is as simple as just having a sit with someone and you're having a meal, or you're just talking without your masks on, and that's how you get the disease. It's that simple. So from asymptomatic, then you have the mild to moderate, which is where I fall in the mild category. Because the moderate category are the ones who start experiencing some difficulty in breathing and are not comfortable with their breathing. And then you have the severe ones who literally need now, they need to be on oxygen. They cannot breathe on their own. And when you do the imaging, that is either CT scan, which is what is being done, that you realize that their lungs have really been affected. And at this point, I'd like to say that I think last month I sat with a colleague who's a radiologist, and she took me through the CT scan that she had been seeing with COVID, and she was like, this disease is literally affecting people's lungs in a way that we've never seen before. Like I remember one was a chest X-ray done on the first day, and on the third day, the effect on the lungs is just you can cringe literally. And
wow!
It makes your lungs literally not be able to effectively do the air exchange, and so that's when the difficulty in breathing sets in. Then you have, of course, the critical ones who go now into respiratory failure, multi-organ system dysfunction, and eventually they die, which is around 5%, 10% of those who get this disease. So it ranges from mild, asymptomatic, all the way to the most severest of forms. And the severest of forms is the ones, of course, there's the age issue, there's the comorbid conditions, hypertension, diabetes, that have shown to have adverse outcomes of the disease.
Dr. I want to ask you something that might seem difficult to answer, but where do you think you got COVID? Where do you think, did it ever cross your mind that it was on this particular day that I sat in this particular area, or that I was with this particular person that I may have contracted the virus?
I'd say my contacts, especially in the last part of the other week, was mainly colleagues, and as colleagues we come across patients, and so I think there's I can't pinpoint a specific person, but what I know is I was among certain colleagues, and at some point we were having, I think, a meal, and perhaps that's a possibility, because I literally don't just go into any gathering. If I go into any meeting that I'm supposed to attend, it's basically you have your masks on. If it's the hospital that I've gone to, then at that point I still have my mask on. So I mean, for me, what I think is perhaps that point when you dropped your mask and you're probably sharing a meal, or you could get the disease.
Right.
Of course, most of the colleagues that I meet, of course, there are those who say, but then we had a positive patient contact, but I was okay, my test was negative and all that, yeah.
So you can't, you can't really pinpoint it and say it was at this point and from this person that I got it. But as you continue to journal, obviously giving your experience, it's not just about you, which I would say hats off to that. But then other people who may need to get this vital information right now that you really can't tell where it is that you might be able to get this, then now really saying that carefulness then needs to really be amped up. Would that be something that you would say?
It sounds to me like you can't be too careful. I mean, from what Doc you're saying, you have been careful. You've washed your hands. You've maintained your distance.
Had your
you've
masked
on. I mean, you've made sure that every interaction that you have, you are very conscious of what's happening around you. But at some point, you will sit down, you'll have a meal, and therefore you'll have your mask off. And just then, I mean, so what? Just to answer, you need to answer what Ndu is asking, and also I am saying it sounds to me like you cannot be too careful.
So, I mean, let's start by accepting the fact that I'm in the high-risk group of people who can get COVID.
Yes,
right.
I mean, and by virtue of being in that profession, it means the people I interact with mostly will be my colleagues also, and equally patients. So that now puts you in a completely different level with regards to if you compare with the general public, because the general public, your work, perhaps if it's not in the medical profession, is you literally have to be careful now, because now you're talking about community spread, and if you're going to meet out a colleague or meet someone over tea, lunch, then that's an area you need to be really careful about, because I think our restaurants are open and people are walking in, and when we're having the meals, I mean, then the other places, these house parties that people are holding even during the day and not at night. Those are places that I think people need to avoid. So you need to limit your movement to basically what is really essential with regards to interacting with other people. For me, it's completely work-related at this point in time. It's not community, because if it wasn't for my work, basically, I just sit in my house and somehow find ways of keeping off interactions and all that. Yeah, so that's the message, that be careful, yes, whatever you do. So just do what is really necessary and essential with regards to going out and meeting people, avoiding gatherings, and avoiding unnecessary travel. It's really important for you to travel and move from one town to the next. If it's just for leisure, I wouldn't advise that at my own personal level.
Dr. if I may move away from the medical field perhaps and move into the realm of government policy making, would you perhaps consider that a lockdown would have been appropriate?
At this point in time where we have community spread, I don't think the lockdown would really help us much. And this is because what we need to do at the moment is make sure that our health system, that is our healthcare facilities, are very well prepared to be able to handle these patients. And why I'm saying this is because looking at our economy and how our country is, you have to do this balance between the health and the life of the people with regards to their livelihood. Yes, COVID-19 is a disease that is easily very transmissible across the community. But also, if you lock down people completely, the question is how long will you lock them down, and how long will it take for us to have an effect of reducing the spread? Because remember, we are now a month into when we de-escalated our mitigation measures and allowed travel and all that. So it means it's all over. And if it's all over, then you might take another a month or two before you start seeing a decrease with regards to if you lock down now. So what has been shown, and even in other countries, like I think in Africa, our worst affected country, South Africa, they put levels and de-escalated, and eventually they just put in measures to ensure that, you know what, just observe the mitigation measures. I mean, at that personal level, observe your distancing, put on your mask, and also limit your interactions as much as possible to basically what is really necessary. Lockdown at this point in time, I do not think it would really help us, because it's all over there. So we just need to make sure that those who need hospitals will get space to be treated, and those who are able to isolate at home remain within the house up until they turn negative or the symptoms resolve and the disease resolves at this point in time. Yeah.
Just from the way you've described your own symptoms to what we read about other people who are also coming out to say they've tested positive for COVID and the journey that they're going through, it sounds as if the symptoms are also not uniform to everybody. You are saying that, for example, you feel some stomach upset in some days. There's somebody else who does not feel stomach upset, but they have the issue of coughing. Somebody else does not have coughing, but they have the issue of temperature. So how do we deal with this? How are even the medics able to cope with this?
Yeah, and that's why for us as medical practitioners, it's not nothing out of the ordinary. Diseases always have symptoms, and so from those symptoms then you're able to tell. So there's a way that we make the diagnosis, and that is why it is important to basically also consult a doctor and a medical practitioner with regards to your symptoms, because I can tell you for a fact there's quite a number who shared with me their experiences, which literally looked like malaria. You know, you have the chills that come on and off. You feel extremely cold, but then the pain that comes with the muscle aches, what is called the myalgias, the muscle aches that come are not characteristic mainly of malaria. So it's us who, as medical practitioners, would listen to you, and then of course there's a history of travel. Did you travel to an area, or now if in the country, have you moved out of Nairobi? Because Nairobi is one of our main, is actually the main epicenter of this disease, with the highest transmission in disease rate. So have you traveled in and out of Nairobi? That travel history is important. If you've traveled in and out of the country, and now that we are getting our skies opened up. So that history, when we take the history with regards to the symptoms, the signs, and then of course you do some examination when you come in, and with the examination, then it's easy to type that what you get out of all that is you call what is a differential diagnosis. So it's possibly malaria, it's possibly COVID, it's possibly this. So okay, fine. So let's rule it out by one doing this test. You do the basic hemogram, you do your COVID test now, and you do your malaria test. And I mean, that's how you're able to get the disease and say, okay, fine, this is COVID now, after you get the confirmatory test. But clinically, it's something that you can pick quite easily on a high index of suspicion, given that we know the disease is with us, and we already know the symptoms that are there. Yeah.
I mean, still just a little bit on that is, Dr. is that still it seems that different people, those who are symptomatic, those who have these symptoms, it seems that the symptoms then are changing from one person to the next, and that an individual then could have COVID, but because they have a tummy ache, for example, are not necessarily going to take themselves to hospital. What then what would you advise at this point, whereby we've been told that these are the symptoms of certain things that you should expect? So here you are at home with a tummy ache, you have no fever, you have no chills, you're not convinced to take yourself to the hospital, and it could be that. How then do we explain that maybe symptoms are changing, maybe something has mutated over time, and now that we have more and more people traveling, could be that COVID is spreading even more because people have symptoms that are not similar to that which we've been told that COVID would bear?
Yeah, so the first thing is to say that we do have the common symptoms, that at least one or two, what you can do, what we call a symptom checker. And with that also is the fact that the disease, which is normal in diseases, this range of symptoms will vary from one individual to the next. There's not a typical presentation of a cough and all that. But I think the best way is to have the call centers that had been set up. I know there's been scaling down of the call centers. Is basically to now have one that will just run around these symptoms, where someone can basically call in if they're at home and just call into the call center. So I think that's the challenge that now needs to be dealt with, and I think government should do this. Is set up a call center that will specifically now handle these issues of symptoms, where people basically feel like I have this, and with a symptom check, or even do a symptom check where you can check your symptoms, and I think from there then now find out if could this be COVID or not. And that is important because what's going to happen is that with that, you'll have people becoming more aware and being able to think, okay, it could be COVID. Because if people are not thinking it could be COVID and it is COVID, you go about your business normally. And unfortunately, you keep transmitting it.
You continue transmitting it. Yeah. Doc, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and have this conversation with you. We'll also ask if anybody has got a question for Dr. Chibanzi. We can give us a call on 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Or post your question on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as KTN Home. Dr. Mwachonda Chibanzi is the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. He's giving us his journey through the battle for COVID-19, tested positive. He's at home. He is mildly symptomatic. He's fighting it. And he's just telling us, this is what I'm going through. And from a medical practitioner's point of view, to somebody who's going through this is the advice that I'd give you. Just keep it right here, because this conversation continues at 28 minutes past 8.
Spice up your life.
Cloudy in Nairobi, 14 degrees. It's going to be this way for most parts of today. Highs of 23 and lows of 11. In Nyeri this morning at 13, it's partly cloudy. Highs of 22 and lows of 12. Those partly cloudy conditions will carry on through most parts of today. Nakuru, 13 degrees and partly cloudy. Highs of 22 and lows of 11. It's mostly sunny in Eldoret at 14. Thunderstorms forecasted for later with highs of 19 and lows of 10. Kisumu is partly cloudy at 19. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 18. And in Kakamega, likely to be a wet afternoon with highs of 23 and lows of 16. In the coastal town, starting with Malindi, 23 degrees and mostly cloudy, highs of 27 with showers expected later and lows of 23. Mombasa is mostly cloudy at 24, highs of 28 and lows of 23 with showers expected later. In Kampala, it's mostly sunny at 21. It'll go to a high of 24 and lows of 18 with partly cloudy conditions throughout today. And in Dar es Salaam, it's 23 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions for now. It'll open up into rain with highs of 29 and lows of 21. Taking a look then into Johannesburg, where it's mostly sunny at 7 degrees. It'll go to a high of 21 and lows of 5 with sunny conditions through most parts of the day. And finally, for now in Lagos, it's clear skies at 24. It will change though to have heavy cloudy conditions later with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Thika Road is backed up all the way to GSU. Unfortunately, today that traffic is of epic proportions. It's bumper to bumper and not moving because you're going to get to the survey part where the pedestrian bridge is being taken down, and that's affecting traffic this morning. Lined up towards, and so there are very many PSVs that are lined up towards Thika Stadium for fumigation and inspection, according to the adherence by the Ministry of Health for COVID-19 safety measures. The queue stretches all the way to the Thika police station, so that's affecting traffic this morning as well. All right, so we know that Thika Road is a mess. You can avoid it if you can, but if you're already there, you need a little bit of patience to be able to get through that. And then we look at other parts of the city where Westlands is a mess as well, as is Mombasa Road. It's smack dab in the middle of traffic hour on a Monday morning. We don't expect less for this time, so you're just going to need a little bit more patience. All right, other parts of getting into the CBD, coming from Bagavi Way, coming from Langata Road, and also coming from Gong Road, not too bad this morning. Let's take a look at Jogo Road, where it looks good right around the City Stadium roundabout, getting into the CBD. CBD is not too clogged for now, but let us know what you see all the same. Spice of MKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
9 o'clock. The Situation Room continues. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. And our conversation this morning is with Daktari. This is Dr. Mwachonda Chibanzi. He is the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, giving us his journey as he fights COVID-19 from home with mild symptoms. Doc, before we went to the break, we were talking about how people can tell whether what they're feeling is likely to be COVID-19. And you raised in that very good issue of the call center. What is happening to the call center? I thought we already had a call center and it was where all of us would go and get information.
I think what has happened is that the call center was somehow downscaled. I know the doctors who used to work there were told that now that the response was being sent down to the counties.
Yeah.
So it was scaled down and they literally had to go back home. These are doctors who are unemployed. Of course, we've always said this is over 1,000 doctors who are unemployed currently. Mm-hmm. And given we know that human resources for health equally are not an acute shortage, we do have those who have comorbid conditions who can offer support and work even during COVID. And one way that they can be brought on board to work is basically handle such issues with regards to call and support to the public. Because I can tell you, Eric, from my experience, since Friday when I came out public, and the people who are known to me, and some who I know have turned positive. Like, let me just say, this happened on Saturday. So one calls me and tells me, Doc, I just got my test, it's positive, and I'm not feeling anything, so what next? Mm-hmm. You know, and at that point in time, it made me think that the solution here would be, yes, people are being told they're COVID positive, and what next? And the reality is that a good number of people don't know what next. People panic. Like, this specific person was really in panic mode. So I tell them, take a breath, just relax. So where are you now? Who are you with? What are you doing? And so I had to tell this person that, okay, fine, from here, this is what you're going to do next. Told them you're going to go straight home because you're asymptomatic. Mm-hmm. Whoever you're with will go with you, and you're going to be in self-isolation, the two of you in that house, your home care guidelines. And you will need the following with regards to your supportive. Remember, this is not definitive. We do not yet know a drug that treats this disease, but what we do is supportive treatment to support the symptoms and bring down the symptoms. So basically, told them you will need vitamin C tablets, which have been shown, the zinc tablets. You will need the antibiotic azithromycin, which we are doing as also to try and prevent any bacterial infection that might superimpose on this viral infection that is there, especially with regards to the respiratory system and how it's affecting the lungs, because it causes a pneumonia in the lungs. So through that process of 10 to 20 minutes of me just talking to them and making them calm down, relax, and find their way back home, they're able to get home. And then the following day when we were discussing and like, how are you feeling today? And I was like, this is I. And then it came out, I've woken up excessively fatigued. And, 2 days before this test, I was feeling excessively fatigued and I'd always want to just lie down, And through that process, I realized, oh my God, there's an opportunity here to give people direction once they do test positive for COVID. And there's also an opportunity for people to now, most of the people I know, and I know very many people, some even doctors and colleagues who've called me now after Friday, told me how they didn't want to talk to anyone about it, and so you keep it to yourself. But,
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a disease that we are getting out of being reckless. It's as simple as I said earlier, just having a discussion. And a good way of bringing it home, and this is not to scare you guys, last week on Monday, I did an interview with you, so you can imagine if I'd come to
If you'd come here, yep.
Right.
Yeah, and we are discussing serious issues,
COVID,
and
yes.
It's work related,
Yeah.
And then the next thing is you hear I've turned COVID. I mean, I'm sure you guys are very relieved that we did a phone call interview. Yeah, so you see, that's the thing that I'm looking at.
So the opportunity here, Doc, is there's a gap, there's an information gap.
Yes.
In terms of, we are seeing more and more people testing positive for COVID-19. They don't know what next. Even those that are testing positive, but they are asymptomatic. Many people don't know what next. There are very many people who may be having these symptoms that could be linked to COVID-19, like having this serious fatigue, and the others like stomach and all. But they also don't know what next. Where can I go? Where do I get tested? From the information that we are hearing, hospitals also don't know how to welcome people who have these symptoms. So how can we address this gap of information?
Yeah, so the gap of information for me can only be done through the experts who know it. And for me, this is where we come in as medical practitioners.
Yeah.
So yes, there is the treating aspect of it. We're in the hospitals, we're dealing with COVID patients, making sure that they get to recover. But equally, we do have, and that's the opportunity that we do have, and this will change how we approach this, have an approach to COVID-19 as a country as we speak.
Yeah.
We equally need health practitioners to be able to communicate to the public, to come out and say, yes, this is how COVID is, this is how you most likely will feel. And I think that information needs to be passed not just through media. And this is not, sorry to say, and I know the Ministry of Health has really tried, it's doing its best, but the daily briefs, people have switched off those briefs.
True.
I can tell you
True.
from the feedback I get. People have switched off from those briefs. So the information now is a completely different tangent. You need to bring out, the Ministry of Health needs to get health practitioners, employ them, let them pass information in many ways through the radio stations, through the TVs. Let people be told. And for those who've gotten the disease and recovered, I think it's equally important that people actually say it so that people can relate, know, that this is how I felt. And this, I think that is really important because if it will help us become aware as a society on what the disease is, and from there now be able to take it up and say, okay, fine, this is how it is,
Just based on how things have been going, Dr. over the last what we've seen today is that we're probably looking at 700 plus more cases every 24 hours. Likely to see more of these in the coming days. How do you think this should be handled?
And that's the thing that it's evidence that we are approaching our peak. I think if you look at this past month of July, we've recorded the highest number of cases, and now in the month of August, moving into September, of course. So, and that's the thing is to make sure that we have enough people to contact trace. We have enough people in the rapid response teams to be able to quickly identify. So if the statistics are out today, let's say in the afternoon, get more statistics, 700 people. So do we have the capacity to trace these 700 people in 24, 48 hours? Each one of them being called and told you're positive. For those who have not gotten their results, being called and told you're positive, and you need to isolate wherever you are, because you might have taken a test and it takes 4 to 5 days. And this is even happening in the States. I was just this morning going to one of the doctors in the States, what he's written with regards to the response. And they were saying there's a delay in even transmission of results to whoever was tested. So as a country, we need to bring on board more healthcare personnel to be able to do different roles, apart from the treating aspect, being able to respond and being able to quickly trace the individuals who have tested positive, for them to be able to isolate quite quickly And from there, then, you reduce the transmission in the community. That's how I see it. So it's a completely different strategy from what we have so far. I know there's rapid response teams, but they're also overwhelmed as we speak. So we need to bring on board more healthcare personnel as much as possible to do this response. Because I can tell you, testing kits, reagents, we can have all that. We can have the facilities. But I keep saying this, that this infrastructure and equipment will not run without people. So we need the healthcare personnel brought on board. And it should be a priority for us to be able to get to the community as soon as possible and isolate them for us to reduce that, break that transmission from one person to the next.
In your opinion, Daktari, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you think we are winning this fight?
We are, to some extent. I wouldn't say on the higher side. I think the recoveries are much higher than the mortalities we've had. What is our biggest problem right now is the rapid spread of the disease and the transmission. So I'd put it around 5 to 6. There's a gap, and we need to address the gaps and address these challenges for us to get to the maximum response of the disease, of handling the disease.
Dr. We want to thank you very much for speaking to us today. And I mean, we know that you wake up and you brace yourself for another long day. It's as you're battling what you're saying, the effects and the symptoms of COVID-19 as they come in and go. We thank you very much for sharing your story. Thank you very much for deciding that you want to journal and educate as many people as possible on what this disease is doing to people. And we wish you all the best.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. I think now I'll go back to resting. And because with viral illnesses, just to say is that you need as maximum rest as possible for you to be able to recover equally. So rest is very important to anyone who's gotten the disease. Even if you're asymptomatic, you need to rest. You shouldn't continue working, because with that, then you strain your body and your mental strength. Yeah. So
Indeed.
thank you very much.
Asante sana, and have a good day. Well, of course, once we get questions coming in on social media, they'll be directed right at you, and you can respond to them on your social media handles as well.
No worries, Eric. Thank you.
Asante, have a
Thanks,
good one.
Dr.
Thank you.
A lot of information that's coming out of just one conversation with somebody who's saying this, and this is somebody who understands what's going, what his body is doing.
Right.
Now you can imagine if he's saying that he got COVID-19, he started reading, he's trying to understand, okay, so why am I feeling this? This is what's happening to my body. Why am I feeling the other? The rest of us who do not have that medical expertise will need a lot of help.
He given his knowledge, he is bound to take a worst case scenario, given his knowledge. But from what he is saying, it's really very basic. And the thing that stands out is the symptoms that are related to COVID are symptoms that people are accustomed to. They are not some way out symptoms that will alarm you. No. They are things that they are symptoms you've experienced at some point in your life. And this is, in my opinion, this is where the danger lies.
It is. And I think one thing that came out is that, look, it almost feels as if he was saying that because of his profession, that he was predisposed to contracting COVID. That he knew that at some point, you mix with people, but still, he was not able to tell the moment that he contracted this virus. He was not able to tell the exact day. He was not able to tell the person from whom he contracted it. So it was very clear that everybody else still needs to be extremely careful. Yes, you can't, with this, you can't be too careful. You really can't. So is there something that you can do to make sure that you keep yourself from harm's way? Yes, there absolutely is. He also talked about the fact that, he would be high risk by nature or by virtue of his profession. However, there's still something that we can all do to make sure that we are careful, because you're not going to be able to walk out of your house today and say, all right, it's going to be today at 2:46 in this particular place where I am that I'm going to be able to contract COVID. You won't know. You won't know the time. You won't know the place. You won't know the day. You won't know the person. So then the blanket here is that carefulness that needs to be employed.
So where is the battle being won? Because outside the realms where care will be taken, like in hospitals, is it being taken in public transport?
No, it isn't.
Is it being taken in the marketplaces?
We heard the Minister for Transport, for example, the Minister for Transport and others, the CS rather, Macharia, speak on Saturday. And one of the things that he did say is that they actually are quite concerned now with what is happening in public transport. Because it's
It's only now that they're concerned.
as you would say, willy-nilly, people are doing whatever it is that they want to do, whereby they reduced the population within public service vehicles to about 50%. That is not being adhered to anymore. Matatu operators, public service operators are looking to have maximum value for the trips, so they're packing people back into like sausages in a can. It doesn't really matter anymore, and they're concerned about this because they see the trend, So how do you know really what lurks out there if you yourself as an individual are not being
Think
not
of
able
where
to be
people
careful?
congregate, for instance, like in marketplaces or places of business, social places,
Bus stops.
situations or conditions where free food is being distributed.
Political gatherings.
Which have been banned.
Pictures taken of politicians in public places. If there's one thing that we are doing right across the board, we are not adhering to these norms at all.
And you would think that people would be, because we saw again that, just over the weekend, a couple of bars, again, having been closed, licenses being revoked, because people just can't adhere. You talk about, okay, don't go, but people are still going.
You see,
What is it?
Don't go doesn't cut it. Don't go. And you leave it at that.
Or even you have somebody who runs this establishment, all right, close at a certain hour. Still not closing.
No,
What
he
is it?
Closes it.
It closes it, but people inside.
People inside.
But it's closed.
No, we shouldn't be surprised at a 700 per day or 1,000 per day. Shouldn't be surprised.
Oh no, actually, we haven't seen our worst yet.
No, absolutely not.
Not really.
The worst has not come.
700? No, not yet. Not yet.
So there are many people also who are taking care of all this. They are not going into those public gatherings. They're not going into bars. They do not use public transport. They are avoiding going to the markets. All those they're doing. But you're inviting your brother and sister to come home for the weekend.
That's also a problem.
And your children are being visited by their cousins.
Yes.
Have a play date as if it's not a problem. It is a problem. Having somebody over for lunch. It is a problem.
This is now where the issue comes in. Basically,
it is a problem.
We can be doing everything else, but then you've invited this friend. I mean, he's just coming alone.
It doesn't matter.
He's coming for lunch.
You don't know where he was before. You don't know where he was 2 days before that. You
Forget
just
him.
don't
the
know.
people he comes into contact with. You see, this is how it works. This is how this pattern works. You don't know who they've been in contact with.
Yes.
There you go.
So it doesn't require a change of behavior. It requires a change in the way you think and the way you look at it. Because if it's behavior, then it'll be for compliance. So that I am seen. This isn't for compliance. This is for life. You actually have to change the way you think completely.
And when you say this is for life, we're not talking about duration. We're talking about actually staying
Staying alive, yes,
right?
as opposed to being
as opposed
dead.
to being dead.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So these things that we're used to, and the thinking that, well, it doesn't seem... Stop that thinking immediately. Stop. Because it's that thinking that has gotten the people who are infected.
Okay, but realistically, City, how far can we stop this thing?
Oh, you can.
Can we stop ourselves? How much can we stop ourselves? Here we are in the studio.
Eric.
We leave the studio. We're going home, and then we're gonna.
We're going to drink tea. Eric, it's not that you're stopping. You're even given guidelines. Social distancing. It's these norms that are not being adhered to. This is the issue. They're actually being flouted left, right, and center.
And
That's
do
where the
you
problem
see
arising.
a possibility of people being able to adhere to
Yes,
all
they
these
can.
things without government support, without not support, without
No.
government push?
Without government intervention?
Yeah.
No.
Not push, enforcement.
No.
Not push, enforcement. This one, the government has to intervene. There's no other way it's going to work.
Or then can we say that as we are doing now, let's continue living the way we are living now. Those that get it, we ensure that we can offer them immediate support.
Why don't you just ask us to move to Tanzania then? Because then they don't have these issues that we have.
The only difference
You
between
just
us and
get
them
on-
is that one, our leader does not say what the Tanzania's leader says. But look what's happening. All these things that we're talking about, the enforcement. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, for us to be able to say that you have gone to a marketplace and you have observed physical distancing and you are completely conscious, but you have been able to go into a market and come out safe. For us to have that, you must limit the number of people who are going into that market.
How are you going to do that?
Exactly. Government.
Yes.
And if the government is not doing that, then let's just say, us guys, Tanzania, same. Because city, so you will take care. The only way you're going to go to work or the only way you're going to earn a living is by leaving your home and going to your place of work.
Yes.
And the only way you're going to get there is you're going to use public transport.
Yes.
So you got up, you washed your hands, you carry a hand sanitizer in your pocket, in your handbag, you get into this matatu, you have a face mask, you even have the shield. Okay? The matatu makanga is screaming at the top of his lungs. The person sitting next to you, fine, they're wearing a mask. But there are surfaces that you're touching as you board a matatu. All these things, man, you still end up being exposed. As you queue to get into this matatu, you are trying to make sure that you don't move close to the person who's next to you at 1.5 meters. The person behind you comes to 0.5 centimeters. What do you do? Do you start fighting everybody and telling them, no way, keep your distance, keep your distance? Do you move away? Do you say, matatu ikikuja muniambie? What do you do?
I'm reminded of a time when people, what enabled you to get into a matatu was your physical strength.
Yeah.
Yes. It stopped and everybody rushed. And the process of rushing meant you were dislodging some people before you got in. Then I saw a time, again, one Mr. John Michuki, when he reined in discipline in that industry, and I saw something I never thought I would see, queues. Every evening you'd see queues. People queue, they board, and then they wait. It was a beautiful sight to behold. I don't know where we lost it again, but it was there for the longest time. You went and you knew this is the queue, you just stood and waited because the vehicle will come, you will board, and you will go.
It's possible for such things to happen.
Not only that, the number of people who could board that matatu was also
reduced.
Yes. So this is not something that we have. I saw it, and it wasn't for a week. It wasn't. I saw it for a number of years. I saw it. So this is not someone telling me. I saw it, and I'm not the only one who saw it.
There was also enforcement.
There was enforcement because they brought in the matatu people, the association that manages them, the people who run it on a day-to-day basis, and then the police. So it was a concerted effort. It worked. Why are you telling me it can't work now?
So the same concerted effort can be applied across board. And I honestly, if there's anything you want to rein in that has gone out of control or something that you're then trying to apply some kind of, maintain some kind of minimum madness, right? It's possible for it to be done. It's possible. If it could be done, whereby you didn't even you had madness already, then it's possible for it to be done in times like this. Can you have queues at bus stops? Can you have queues before people get into Malata? Can you ensure that it is 7 as opposed to 14? Can you ensure that it's 26 as opposed to 52? Can you do that? Yes, we can. We're not talking about some crazy rocket science. And like I keep saying, even rocket science, and then our people on the moon, they figured it out. Even that one, they figured it out. This one, you can.
Do you know, forget seeing, I participated. You board a bus or a matatu, you're told, no, we are full. You're told. And it's not overflowing. Everyone is seated comfortably, told, we're full. And they take off.
Carry on. Next.
Yes, next. The next one. That order was there. To tell me...
Some of it actually is not about enforcement.
No, it
it's
isn't.
about yourself.
Yes.
When we spoke to KTN journalists in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and we asked them what's happening as people are being told to be aware of COVID-19, he told us they have this new rapid bus transport system in the town in Dar es Salaam. Initially, people would park themselves in there like sardines. After these measures and were told, let's not fill up our buses, someone would get into a bus, look and see it's full and say, basi limeja, and not board that bus. Personal initiative.
Eric.
Right now, we are complaining about your matatus are packing people up. No, people
We
are getting
are
into the
packing. We are packing the matatus.
matatus.
Yes. If you say
Humans are getting into the matatus.
I want to take this quick break and say thank you very much to our audience on KTN Home for tuning in today, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Join us again tomorrow on KTN Home, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. But the conversation on Spice FM continues. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. We are here until 10 o'clock. Right now, it's 4 minutes to 9.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
So
94.4 Spice FM.
People to observe these measures. Is it possible, I want to ask that question again, is it possible for UCT to completely protect yourself from COVID-19?
Completely now is what becomes tricky. Because essentially it's like asking me, am I going to isolate myself completely and not get on with just the normal business of going to work, talking to my neighbor? I think if I adhere to the norms that have been set forth, I can talk to my neighbor at a distance. And I can ensure that I always have my face mask on me at any given moment in time.
Yeah.
When I leave my house, it's on. I can do that. I can even, if I happen to drive, then I can also make sure that I have it on me and I have it on my face, even meaning it's a habit I can acquire.
Yeah.
And you can also control yourself not to have the blokes over for a drink or a meal. You can control yourself, and to say, okay, you know what, we'll not do that play date. We'll not do this, whatever. We'll not just go, my cousin I've not seen for a minute. You can actually control yourself. You can. There's certain things that you can do to these measures that they say will actually help in a serious reduction of the spread of this thing. You can do it. It's not going to kill you. Really?
People are getting accustomed to Zoom calls. Everybody now knows, people know about Zoom more than they did before.
You can have a Zoom meal even.
You can actually, people
are doing
explain how you can do that. But
share a recipe, make the meal, and then you
say,
video call as you eat.
Is it okay if it's burnt?
Mine is a bit salty.
Yes.
But it's all right.
It's a question of getting accustomed. People have gotten accustomed to talking over the phone, to having meetings over the phone.
Yeah.
Let's not complicate Zoom. Let's not bring Zoom into it. Yes, phone. It can become the norm if you want it to become the norm. Right now, people have gotten used to not shaking hands. This is what I've seen.
Yeah.
People don't shake hands.
Yeah.
And Kenyans used to shake hands. Trust me, from somebody who's coming from outside, you guys, you shake hands
Not
properly.
to forget shake, we shake and hold on to it.
And to see that it doesn't happen anymore.
Yes.
It's
people
miraculous.
do the elbow thing. Yes, but they don't shake hands. So, is it possible? Yes, it is.
It is indeed possible.
It is possible.
And the vast majority of people, believe me, would adhere.
Coming to the top of the hour, just remind us today's Proverb City.
The sun does not forget a village because it is small.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Just because it is small. That's not the reason.
It will visit.
It'll visit.
So it's like that song of yours that intenses are rohoni. Usinipite mokozi.
Yes. Do not pass me by.
Yes.
That particular song is actually not even biblical, but that's a discussion for another
That's
day.
another one? Okay. All right. Do not pass me by. Coming up to 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is Spice FM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi.
Thika Road is a total
Traffic.
mess. Now, here's what you can do. Use the Kasarani Loksama Babadogo outer ring to get out of that mess. You can do that, and I'm going to say it again. Use Kasarani Loksama Babadogo and outer ring road to get out of the mess that is Thika Road this morning. It was said that it would be getting better, but unfortunately, wahala, they don't spoil everything. So the genesis of this started from the footbridge that was being taken down this morning. No notice, but okay, no problem. We just wake up and we find the drama as we see it, but we shall move regardless. Wayaki Way also is a parking lot, and it's absolutely crazy, guys. Trying to get into the CBD coming out of Westlands, headache galore. Wahala completely. And this is what we see this morning. Manic Monday doesn't even begin to describe it. Mombasa Road is also quite crazy. It's another definition of wahala right there as well. Trying to get into the CBD. If you get past Bellevue, you'll be fine. Getting there, that's the problem. Okay, so yeah, I've told you it's a mess. I don't know what else to tell you apart from that. Total mess. Shike nang, wiping my hands. Tell me what else you see, and we'll talk about that later. Spice FMKE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only
Remember,
way to start
if
your
you
day.
are in Malindi, you will catch Spice FM on 97.7. If you go to Nyeri, 90.9. Eldoret, 96.7. Nakuru is 96.0, 102.5 in Kisumu, Mombasa 87.9, 94.4 in Nairobi, and anywhere you are around the world, in the country and abroad, Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now, let's talk about politics in this hour, okay? A couple of issues. The headline in today's Standard says, inside the last 735 days as president, and makes last, puts red on the last, right? So you can just see.
Just in case you miss it.
Yes, just remember, these are the final days of Uhuru Kenyatta as president, 735 and counting. The corona pandemic is eating away into the little time that he has left. Signs are palpable that he could soon enter the lame duck phase. At most, he has 12 short months to do what he did not do in 96 months and undo what he did not do right. Will he hack it?
Well, it's a political story, and it's reported in the most political way you could possibly report it.
Why?
Well, you see, every presidency comes to an end.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes.
And when you talk about what a president has achieved and what they haven't, what are we, let's agree on what we are pegging this onto. Are we pegging it onto should we say the promises that were made at campaign time?
Yep.
Are we pegging it to the legacy projects that the person has begun? Are we pegging it to the peace we have in the country? Are we pegging it onto the continuity of projects that had been there previously? Are we pegging it to the reduction of poverty or the increase of it thereof?
Development in the country.
What are we pegging it onto?
We're pegging it on what he has declared himself as what he'd like to leave as his legacy.
Okay.
Right? And this is the big four.
Yes.
When you talk about the big four, these are projects that need to at least get to some level of some degree of completion by August 9th, 2022. When you talk about, there's some things, of course, that you look at. Is he going to be able to cement that and say, this is something that I've ensured has stayed on in the country? Relative calm and peace in between political campaigns. As we get into the next political campaign, are we going to see an experience as we've experienced before, every time we go into an election campaign. He has previously said, I would like us to get to a point where a campaign, an election period is just a normal period, just like any other. We have peace, people are campaigning, they come, they ask you for your vote, you listen to them, you decide who you want to vote for, and life moves on. There is no acrimony, there is no rise in tensions. Is he going to be able to achieve that by next year? And by August next year, when he'll now have 1 year left. This is what we're pegging all these on.
Maybe we should ask the question. You see, a legacy has an element of continuum to it, in that what you're hoping to end up with is something that you are already in the process of doing. So what are we in the process of seeing?
Okay. Well, if you want to look at what the top achievements are that are being touted, it seems that there are two. And that would be the SGR, that has been brought in and has been completed, leave alone that it still has issues here and there. But then that and the handshake. And I think that it's in two things, really, out of 10 years. 10 years to be completed in a matter of, almost less than 2 years, right? Two things having been looked at and say that if we look at the administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta, that these would have been the two things that he would have been most remembered for. All right? Now, if you want to look at blots on...
This is subjective, though. It is in the eyes of the editors of the Standard.
I would agree 100%. And are we going to say that it's just those two? I think that there were many more. Now, if you want to look at legacy in continuum, it could be that the next administration is going to look at the big four and say, actually, you know what? This is something that we can now take and finish. It would be something that he started. Some of the development projects, for example, that President Kibaki started were not finished during his tenure. They were finished after, but he would have been seen as the pioneer of some of these things. And then because of that, you remember him for certain things, for certain financial developments that took place in the country, for certain infrastructure development projects that began and then were completed even after his time. So when we look at legacy, I don't think you need to look at legacy or look at things that somebody was able to then be seen to have succeeded with in just the time that they sat at that position, because you look at things around the world that were completed even after certain presidents who initiated them had died, much less have been in office, right? So yes, there are things that have marred this presidency, very many things, but the fight against corruption, for example, just like you say so rightly so, Eric, that it could be subjective because this is somebody's outlook, but have you seen, for example, some of the cases having been brought to court, some of the convictions that we've seen in any other presidency to the magnitude that we've seen it now during this presidency? That's something that could be argued, that the fight against corruption has been taken on, head on, front and center. It's been brought to the fore.
I'm smiling. I'm asking, even as you're asking the question, I'm asking, have we seen this level of thievery? Have we seen this level of corruption before?
Have you seen have you seen the big names? Have you seen the big names being brought to the fore in any other administration? Have you seen it to this extent? Have we seen it?
To what extent?
Whereby you have people being brought to actually forget about even starting a trial.
Just being arraigned.
Charged.
Being arraigned in court is something big.
It's a big deal. It has not happened before.
It has happened before.
Well, to the numbers that we are seeing it now?
Maybe not.
No.
We haven't seen, for example, a president go to parliament and declare that, you know what, I have received a report from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and I am actioning this report by, first of all, getting these people out of my government. In parliament, on record. This is a house of records. He went and said, and how many CSs left office immediately? 6 CSs. How many PSs? A number of PSs. How many heads of parastatals? Quite a number. And he said, this is what I have. This is the support I am giving the EACC. They have given me a report. They have told me that we have damning evidence against these individuals, Mr. President. And he said, all right, so let's just get them out so that you can continue with this job. That is something that we can say that it's people will not remember now, but at some point they will remember.
You see, there's what we remember in the short term, and there's what historians will pen down. And that often takes time, because with time also, things that you didn't know will become known. You see, there are decisions that are made, and there are other contributing factors that those of us in the public domain really aren't aware of. And it's only with the time that they become relevant. They become relevant when people write memoirs.
Yeah.
Then they say things that you didn't know. You said, oh, my goodness. So you mean this is what was happening at this particular point in time? With the time also, you get to compare what that person did against what someone else has done. And you realize, we may have been unfair to this person. This person probably was doing something that was actually of interest and useful. We just didn't see it then. You see, for instance, one of the things that for the longest time, and even to date is still mentioned, people like referring to the former president, the late President Darling Moi, as a dictator. But what they forget is this same individual, this is the one who enabled this multipartyism to be ushered into the country. Then he did something else that most presidents of his ilk could not and did not do because they died on the job. He left the job. Now, what do you want his legacy to be? And I'm saying this because usually legacies are a mixed cup. It's not one thing. And the perspective is not the same, it's not uniform. It depends on who is talking about the legacy. And yet there are legacies that can be universally agreed upon. Like, for instance, if I talk about President Moi, it can be agreed upon that this man furthered education more than any other president that we've had since. He seemed to have focused on education. It is during his time that we even opened up higher learning. I dare say at the detriment of TVETs, but we opened up higher learning. Now, these are things that one can cross-check and determine to be true or not. But alongside that, one will talk about people who were detained.
Yeah.
Alongside that, one will talk about people who had to leave the country.
The clawback on democracy vis-a-vis the maintaining of peace within the country.
Thank you, Eric. You've got it.
It's a mixed bag.
You have got it completely. Yes.
It's a mixed bag.
And then you have to throw in the times in which that was happening. And to judge such a situation correctly, you really have to give it within that time space and say, what else was happening around at that particular point in time? And what could have pushed this decision making? And then you look at the outcome. And if the outcome is positive, then you'll argue and say, it may not have begun well, but it appears like at the end of the day, the outcome was not as negative as one may have anticipated.
I think then from where we sit today and looking at also how the story in the Standard has been written, I take it back to the people around the president and the president himself sitting down and agreeing, how do we want to shape this conversation going forward? Because I think unless the president is in charge of the conversation around his legacy, then his legacy is just going to be all up in the air.
Gone in the wind.
This is a thing, and everybody's going to then interpret what they think it would be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with actually opening your mouth, stepping up and saying, you know what, in the times that I have been here, this is what I want it to be.
Yep.
However you choose to interpret that is completely up to you. But this is what I want to be remembered by, and I think you play a part in forming the memory of a legacy in the minds of people when you actually say, this is what I want it to be. Look at some of the things that you're saying stand out, for example, about President Moi. Why? Because it was something that he was vested in doing year after year after year, okay? The same thing that he would have done year after year after year is something that stands as something negative in the minds of other people.
Yes, it does.
When it comes to the detentions, for example, and the things that they suffered once they opened their mouth to to say anything against his administration,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That's in the minds of other people, but it's something that he did repetitively. And he spoke about it in public, for example, with education. When he talked about multipartism, he said, you know what, let's do this thing once and for all, finally, and get it done. And you remember it from that because before that, he said something different. But the moment he stood up and spoke and said, all right, let's see how we can bring about change, guess what? You remember him for just that. You remember him for that.
We'll open up this conversation so you can also join in 0719-012-600 and also Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. What we'd like to ask you today is not about legacy, but what you'd consider President Uhuru Kenyatta's achievements so far. All right. So far, what are the president's achievements? So far, what are the blots on his presidency? From 2013 to now, 2020, what would you consider the achievements that this president has had, and what would you consider as the blots to his presidency? And then maybe now we can also ask, then which of these should he be forming and shaping as the key drivers of his legacy? because that's also important. 0719-012-600. You can call in, and also Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, the president now has 735 days left before we go into the next general election. And after the next general election, he'll just be a caretaker president, so not much to do. And then, after that, there's a new president who's declared, and he's just a caretaker until he hands over power. And between now, according to the story, and we know this is to be true because this is Kenyan politics, between now and maybe August next year is when he has time to say, to order people, to issue instructions. After that, he becomes a lame duck president. People are focusing on the 2022 elections, that whatever the president says is like, wewe si unaenda, leave us alone. So what do you think is you'd consider President Uhuru Kenyatta's key achievements in the last 7 years, and what would you consider his main blots to his legacy? 0719-012-600.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, the clouds seem to have lifted in certain parts of the city. 15 degrees and mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 11 in Nairobi. It's partly cloudy in Nyeri at 14, highs of 22 and lows of 12. In Nakuru, 14 degrees and partly cloudy. We'll see highs of 22 and lows of 11. Eldoret will have thunderstorms this afternoon with highs of 19 and lows of 11. And Kisumu, partly cloudy conditions throughout the city with highs of 26 and lows of 18. Kakamega is mostly cloudy at 18 degrees this morning, highs of 23 and lows of 16. Thunderstorms for the afternoon. Malindi at 24 degrees is mostly cloudy, highs of 27 and lows of 23. It's light rain showers in Mombasa at 24, likely to continue through most of the day with highs of 28 and lows of 23. Partly cloudy conditions in Kampala will rule the day, highs of 24 and lows of 18. And in Dar es Salaam, it's mostly sunny right now at 24. The heavens will open up though with highs of 29 and lows of 21. In Joburg, it's mostly sunny at 7 degrees, highs of 21 and lows of 6 with sunny conditions throughout the day. Clear skies in Lagos at 24, highs of 28 and lows of 23. We'll take a look into Europe, where in Paris it's partly cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 12. Taking a look then into London, and it's partly cloudy at 16, highs of 22 and lows of 11. And finally for now in New York, early Monday morning, flash flood watch for New York this morning at 28 degrees. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 24 with thunderstorms threatening the night into Tuesday morning.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. All right, okay. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Situation Room. In the room, we have Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Siti Muga. Top achievements of President Uhuru Kenyatta was what we are asking. We know, yes, there's the start and completion of the SGR from Nairobi all the way to Naivasha. We have the handshake between the two leaders, President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. Then we have others that have not been captured, for example, in this story today. But there are very many others that, for example, as we were running into the last time, the 2017 general election, what they were saying that they have achieved, rural electrification, the number of people connected to electricity. So there's argument on whether that was a sound decision or whether it was just a political decision and whether it has had an impact. The expansion of the road network, the roads that are paved, that also has its own counter-argument on the cost. There was a story the other day that was comparing the costs of road projects under President Uhuru Kenyatta and the road projects under his predecessor, President Mwai Kibaki, and it's quite high. Then there are very many things that have happened over the last X number of years. Maybe some people may call these are achievements, and others may argue that these are not achievements. But what are those? And that's what we'd like you to tell us this morning. Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
You know what? I guess you want to look at it from where you sit. And if you want to look at the country as a whole, you then ask yourself, all right, what has been done for the country? Truly, has infrastructure improved, or has it, gotten worse over time? Okay, so transport may have increased with the introduction of the SGR, with the management of it and such. But then I think different things mean different things to different people. Okay.
That is
depending on the day.
No, that's a profound statement.
Different things mean different things to different people.
To different people, yeah.
I thought the thing would come in a third time first, but this is
No.
yes. It does.
Right?
It does.
Yeah. So you see this thing as the SGR, and it means transport for you in an ultra modern city. For someone else, it means the continuation of their business. For someone else, it's something so far removed from their reality that it means absolutely nothing
For some,
to
It's
them.
the end of their business.
Yeah,
complete
for some, it's the end
decimation
of their
of their
business.
livelihood.
Yes.
So, in terms of legacy, positive on one hand, negative on the other. So, really, as they say, until the lion learns to speak, the tale of the hunt only glorifies the hunter, right? So, what does it then mean for each individual who is in this scenario? And I think that's the thing about legacy.
So what you're saying is we ought to be looking at how then do you ensure that there is a certain resonance
Across
certain
board.
with the same activity, same project, but how do you get people to see it in the same light?
The same light. Exactly. And
Everybody.
only until you do that does it then become legacy that is renowned across board.
There's
Or amplify some and make sure that those are the only ones that are constantly in the people's minds. It's about political communication. Let's go to the phone lines because Raymond is calling in from Langata this morning. Raymond, good morning.
Good morning, Eric, Undu and City.
Good morning.
Then one of the achievements I can say, and also that you said, I think it's about SGR. I think, though it was overpraised compared to Ethiopia and Tanzania, I think that was I think it's been a great project. But when I can say SGR, I think it has helped in movement from Nairobi to Mombasa and all that. And also the second thing is about Huduma Center.
Yeah.
I think President Uhuru has helped in digitization of government services. Like, for example, you can say in TSA, you can log on and, get services from TSA and all that. I think Huduma Center has been a great deal also.
All right. What are his main blots? What would you say that this one will...
Goof moment.
Yeah. Cloud his
Sorry?
legacy. What would you say clouds his legacy?
Sorry, I cannot get you well.
What did you say has been a negative in his presidency?
Corruption. I think in his term there has been numerous corruption scandals. Ministers being involved in corruption, rather than firing them, we just changing them to or transferring them to different ministries and all that. I think he has all been about talking, but there is nothing about corruption. I think also corruption will be also a negative legacy for President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raymond, for that input. Thank you very much. 0719-012-600. What would you say has been President Uhuru Kenyatta's top achievement in the last 7 years that he's been president, since 2013 to now, 2020? What would you say he's done that, will stand the test of time? And what is it that you would say has not really been a good thing? And also you can post your comments on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Some comments coming in?
I would give the president 2 out of 10, says Mwende, in comparison to the manifesto. The problem is that our leaders think that they do favors for us, yet they use taxpayers' money. Poverty, unemployment, standards of living are at their highest, and of course, corruption and impunity.
Wow. Okay.
Rosalind also says a concerted effort with some form of benevolent dictatorship is what this country needs. Right.
So, you see, the outlook is different. And I think that's important that the president keeps asking people, what do you think I have done? So that he can continue facing. And I think that person who wrote that comment where you're saying that politicians think that they're doing us a favor. So sometimes when they just do the very basic, they want to be praised for doing the very basic. I mean, this is what you're supposed to do anyway.
Anyway, it's what you're being paid for. Come on, guys. You can't. Beyond what your job description is. If you fill the tenets of your job description, then all right, you've done your job. You collect your salary. Thank you very much. Carry on. Keep doing it. If you do something spectacular out of that, then all right, you might receive some praise and award. But I do agree with this, that unfortunately people have thought to think, like, come back to the water discussion. If you deposit a tank of water in a ward somewhere, and then somebody lauds it and says fantastic,
saying, oh my.
Or you put a toilet somewhere and call it the greatest conception in East Africa, and then people want to applaud you. Come on, guys. You're doing what you've been asked to do.
You use a good word there, laud it.
Before you do that, Ziti, let's go to the phone lines. Alex in Kitale, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you, Alex?
I'm fine.
What would you say is the president's main achievement so far?
I think the best thing the president has done is this thing about Huduma Center, where people can access government services within a very, very short time without traveling long distances.
Right.
That is the best thing, I think.
Anything that you'd say is the worst thing?
About the project, the digital learning literacy for class 1.
The laptops.
That had to cost, I think, the laptop project.
Right.
That was a sham. That was a scam too.
Scam and flop and sham. All right, Alex. Yeah. Thank you very much. John in Nyandarua, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. We're good.
Yes, I'm fine. Nyandarua is fine. Now, the president's positive contribution was the implementation of the new constitution. That he did very well, because he also contributed in laying down the foundations of the counties, and we have seen the positive part of the county government. He has also contributed very well in infrastructure development, the SGR, roads, and the laptop project. But the negative part of his legacy will be the high debt that the country is facing.
Right.
This would affect the country for years to come. And also the high rate of corruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Leonard in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning to you. Fine, thank you.
I'd like to say, okay, for infrastructure, I can give him a B minus.
Oh, okay.
And for the debts that you have incurred so far, the debt, I can give him an A minus. You have so much in debt.
So you'll give him an A minus for debt?
Yeah, we have.
Oh, so you're scoring him positive points for negative thing?
It is not. No, I'm saying, if I say A minus, it means we have scored so much in debt. We are so high in the negative in terms of debt.
Okay.
And now, what I want to talk about more is the resource utilization. You see, if you have resource, the best you can do for it is optimally use the resource. Fine, we can talk about the SGR and all those mega projects, but you realize that these funds, if they were optimally used, in terms of looking at where if the resources were used, could have done a multiplier in terms of employment. For instance, pump the money in agriculture, make good feeder roads for the people in the rural areas so that they can access just the market. You'll realize that more employment will have been in agriculture than basically taking all those 324 billion and throwing it at SGR.
Yeah.
Yes. So resource utilization.
Resource utilization is something that you would say is poorly done and poorly managed.
Very poorly.
Thank you, Leonard. Gordon in Kasarani. Good morning, Gordon.
How are you, Eric?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Great city and Udu.
Greeted.
We have been greeted, thank you.
Okay. So we are talking about President Uhuru's legacy, right?
Yes.
I think he's done so well in terms of being a cool president who has unified the country. Particularly the handshake. When we look around how we had elections twice, we had the presidential elections in August. It was thrown out by the CJ at the Supreme Court, and then he played it very cool. We had another election in October where a co-participant did not take part, and we went into swearing in our people's president. Things were still cool, and we had the handshake. So that legacy was really good, and I think that is a very positive thing for him.
Stands out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that's negative?
I know we can have divergent views, but chronism. We've had appointments that majorly, if you look at major appointments, they lean towards a certain region. People can have divergent views about this, but if you just take an audit of appointments, then people can just sit in that meeting of key appointments and speak a certain language. And I think maybe that one, you don't speak so well about his trying to at least bring in inclusivity in appointments. Though at some points, maybe there are some changes, but majorly, the chronism started earlier with other presidents, and he escalated it. I think that one, he should have done better. Should have done better in that area.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gordon.
Thank you all of you. You are doing a good job. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. We are discussing the president's legacy. He has 735 days to the end of his term in 2022. What is it that you would say that the president has done enough or very well in so far? And what is it that he has not done very well in so far? And what is it that should form his legacy then going forward? This is a conversation we're having. 0719-012-600. Also, you can post your comments on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. 28 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
All right, on Gong Road,
Traffic.
as far as Carrapon Drive, there's a lot going on, guys, and PSVs and service vehicles are being asked for COVID-19 certification, so it's causing some traffic there. If you're planning on using Waiyaki Way today, brace yourself for heavy traffic. There's road construction that has resumed this Monday morning, just before and after Kangemi, so if you've not left home early, you're going to be stuck there for a quick or slow Nairobi minute. And as is the case on Thika Road, where they didn't tell you beforehand, they are removing some of the footbridges, so that is affecting traffic. The service lanes that were being used earlier are not being used anymore because everybody's trying to use them at the same time. So getting into the CBD via Thika Road or doing so via Westlands this morning is a headache, and it's not very good, unfortunately. Coming off of Mombasa Road as well, where the construction is taking place round around Bellevue, there's some problems there, but as you get now beyond the capital center turnoff, you should be fine before you then get onto Huru Highway after the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Omo, it hot today, as we would say. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You know, the president's achievements so far have been since 2013 to now. And what is it that you say you think the president has not been able to do very well so far? Zachary in Nakuru, good morning.
Oh, good morning, guys.
How are you?
Morning, Zachary.
Oh, I hope every one of you had a good weekend like me.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Okay, now you are discussing a very good topic. Discussing about our president's legacy.
Yeah.
And one of the most, outstanding things that, to me, that is according to me, he has done, is to demystify the presidency. And I think all the geezers like Mwarimandro, like me, like others who are listening, we will know that, or will agree with me that the presidency was something that was, held high, so high that sometimes there was a time that even talking about the president or thinking about him would have added you into some very serious trouble. Yeah. And I think Andrew will agree with me. Yeah.
Mwalimu, is that true?
No. I've been called an old geezer. I was waiting for him to add toothless to it, but I didn't.
Then let me call you an old timer. Now
you think it's better than the previous one?
I do think so.
I accept both, Zachary. Thank you.
Okay. But Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta has come to give the presidency a human face. You see, once in a while you find that he was in Burma. The other time you find that he was in town. Impromptu. Impromptu, that is, yeah. The other times you find him entertaining kids in a state house. Other times you find him receiving sugarcane from a very old woman in the village. Yeah. So that kind of thing, yeah. It has now given the presidency the human face. Even guys argue with him.
So how important is that, Zachary, to the country, to the nation?
Oh, that is very good, Mr. Eric, because if the president is, a human being, yeah, you are even able to question him, to argue with him. Although some people have misused that one to actually disrespect, abuse. But it should be, you see, like the way in America they do, yeah? You can even question the president, isn't it? But you are not allowed to, as you question him, remember that he is the head of state. So that you have to give him respect should be according to that office that he holds. Okay. So to me that is very important, Mr. Eric.
Are these things the work of Uhuru Kenyatta, the man, or are they the work of institutions created by the 2010 Constitution?
I would largely say that it is the work of the Constitution. But let me tell you, Mr. Eric. You see, now you are the agent provocateur. If you chose not to pick my phone, yeah?
Yep.
It was your discretion, is it? So it is Mr. Uhuru's, liking for democracy. Let me say so, yeah? And he's a man of the people, yeah? He likes people, that he chooses to, let me just go down and, try to mingle with these people, yeah?
Okay.
So that they do not fear the presidency. Do you see?
Okay.
That would be my thing.
I don't know. So I hear you saying that then one of his achievements would be that he was then an approachable president, and then people argue things with him. I don't know how that affects, for example, the country on a whole.
It opens up democracy.
Actually, it's what falls under the category of a soft legacy.
Okay.
And it is important because for a politician, perceptions are very, very, very important. How people view you, how you are seen. And remember, he has the disadvantage of having had a father who was also president.
Yeah.
And then he has a further advantage of having had his father's vice president who was president and who was seen as his mentor. So these are part of his legacies. So even when he's looked at or when he's judged, the thinking behind President Uhuru's legacy, these two gentlemen that I've just mentioned are never far from the picture. So how do we divorce him from this? And can we? The answer is we actually can't. But given what he has done, and this is where I think Zachary's point is valid, as an individual, he is considered to be approachable. His father was not considered to be approachable. No, he wasn't. President Moi was considered to be approachable.
By some.
President Moi was actually considered to be approachable by the Mwananchi.
By some.
by the Mwananchi, not his fellow politicians.
Yeah.
Let me repeat. President Moi seemed to be approachable by the Mwananchi, not by his politicians or his fellow politicians. President Kibaki was considered to be aloof. I'm talking about perception. Now, perception usually is what somebody considers to be their reality. And what you are doing correctly saying, it isn't everybody's reality. And that is true. It isn't. But it's the perception.
Yeah, that perception, especially of President Moi and him being approachable. At some point, yes, he was really working hard at that, stopping by the roadside, buying bread, stopping by every school and giving them something and all. But that is one way. It is him choosing to interact with you. But you choosing to interact with him, or you choosing to criticize him, or you choosing to question him, because the issue that Zachary is saying is because of that, the presidency is one of the other institutions in government, and therefore we can question what the man is occupying that office is doing. We can discuss Uhuru Kenyatta, and we can have people going on to Twitter and talking all manner of things about Uhuru Kenyatta and his legacy as the president, and questioning his thinking, questioning his judgment. This is what Zachary, I think, is saying.
The fundamental difference here is this. You could criticize Moi, and the net result of your criticism were also known. You could criticize President Uhuru, and the same results would not apply.
Right.
You could even criticize Jomo Kenyatta, and heaven help you.
And it would be a totally different story.
Yes.
Some of these things, though, if you were to look at them in terms of the soft and hard, the development of the country, what really does matter to the republic, right? And advancing the ideals of a democratic republic and a nation coming together as one people. You could say that, yes, he has done a bit, but also in terms of improving the livelihoods of the people, improving the economy, pulling people out of poverty.
But Eric, if you look at our presidents, would you not say that each of them represents a progression? You start off with Jomo Kenyatta, you see certain traits. You see President Moi, you see certain traits. Even making it possible for multipartyism to come in without too much of a hoo-ha. Then you see President Kibaki opening that space even further. Would you say that these presidents, in a sense, represent that progression?
Yep.
Whereas other countries over the same period of time, you had one or two presidents who maintained the status quo because the one president more or less chooses his successor. So you're more or less guaranteed that the status quo will be maintained. And that's a legacy.
It is. Interesting.
Do we lower the bar too low? Do we raise the bar too high?
I wouldn't say we would want to lower the bar. There is the question of, you see, the interpretation of these things is very much determined by, among other things, the expectations that people have. You see, if for you, the evolution, I'm going to take you back to independence. I was informed by my parents that for many people, they thought what independence meant was that all the white people would leave. Yes, and then they would go and occupy the houses that the white people had and lands and take over their jobs. Now, note, no one has brought into account what their jobs were, what qualifications were required to do these jobs, etc. It was perception.
Yeah.
In the same way, when we talk about devolution, there were expectations. Now, because these are expectations, people will interpret certain things based on that expectation. Yes.
That's it. And you know what? You'd be surprised that the majority of Kenyans right now, do you know what their expectation of a leader is? You know, just doing a snapshot for what people have said. People's expectation is that I would be able to live in an environment whereby I can have meal on the table, my children can go to school, and I will be able to have decent, accommodative, shelter that I can then live in. And then I want to be able to make sure that, all right, can I, live in a place that's suitable? Can I have a little bit of a saving here or there? And to just live a comfortable life. That's the expectation of the majority. Because of what they've been through, people's expectation is not to be some rich, high-flying. People just want to be able to get by, and to do that with,
people who are not politicians.
Oh, okay. But, this is the majority of the people in the country.
Yes.
The majority of the people in the country just want to be able to get by, want to have water flowing in the taps, want to be able to buy a meal, buy food, for a certain period of time without going through much trouble, be able to walk into a health facility and get services, be able to take their children to school without too much of a headache. The majority of the people in any country want to be able to just get by. So now, if you ask yourselves, if then this presidency has succeeded or failed based on those expectations,
meeting those expectations,
you would be surprised at what people would be able to tell you, that there's no money flowing in the economy, we don't have this, that, the other thing, we go to hospital, we can't get this, we have to pay for it. So then for a lot of people, it would be that, unfortunately, it hasn't met their expectations.
You know, fortunately and unfortunately, we live in the information age. So people are able to compare. They're able to compare what your government is doing for you and what other governments are doing for their people. And this is where now the issues start coming
Even county-wise.
Even county-wise, right? So when people are talking about how much money has the country borrowed and what has it utilized it for, they are comparing it with what other countries are doing. They're comparing it with what the budgets of other countries and the kind of advancements that you see in those other countries. Sometimes we become too harsh on ourselves by looking at another country and thinking, oh my God, you know, because they came from 0 roads to 5 roads, we're like, look, those guys are really doing roads. And you're forgetting that you've also moved from 50 roads to 55 roads. You've also done the same, right? But that is more visible to those people, and so they shout about it, and yours is not so visible to you because you're used to it and you don't shout about it. That is the other underside of the information age. However, those comparisons are critical and they're important. Because they keep reminding us. Right now we're talking about how the country is fighting COVID-19, how our country is giving social protection to its citizens. We are comparing with other countries. What have these other countries done? What is it that they have been able to do? How have they cushioned their population from the effects of COVID-19, the economic impact of COVID-19, the health impact of COVID-19? What has our government done? So when you talk about the headline in today's Nation, the traders who made millions from COVID, and this is basically talking about people who went and manipulated the procurement system so that they could make money out of the misery of a country. You ask yourself, was this under the watch of the government? Is the man at the helm of the government the president? So are we therefore saying that this was under the president's watch? These are the questions that emerge. Back to the phone lines. Peter in Nanyuki, good morning.
Morning, sir.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
We are very well, thank you. Thank you very much for calling in. What would you say is the president's main achievement so far?
I think I'll remember him for 2 things, yeah? The main one would be the death proof, yeah?
Okay.
I think in history, we remember him for having taken us to burdens of debt which are not shown by any way of development.
Okay. Commensurate development.
The second one will be the confusion is brought in our political environment. I think that does not need to be explained much further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Let's hear from Lydia. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your good efforts in brainstorming. I also wanted to say that since the post-election violence, nothing is possible. They brought, under the ransom, they gave us a biggest bloated parliament, biggest bloated everything. There's nobody to offer any services at all. The service side is not improved because of the post-election violence. It's only the big bloated big fish. That is all what the government has become. Thank you, Spice FM.
Thank you, Lydia. Geoffrey, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM.
Good morning.
Good morning. How is Mombasa today?
Thank you. Mombasa is okay. We thank God. Little drizzles in the morning, but now there is sunshine.
Okay.
Well, I want to appreciate what the president has done. In the first place, having been the one who implemented the constitution whereby we have devolution. He has made sure that it's there, despite the fact that there are challenges that are involved with devolution, but he made sure that it happened. Number two, I want to appreciate the fact that he embraced handshake that brought in peace, which we actually needed as a country for us to progress in our little capacities. However, it's unfortunate the digital learning project failed us because it has come to pass in this COVID era that it's not working for us. It is a failure. he had promised studies. I don't think if there is any that we can be proud and say it has been achieved. Well, lastly, I'll say he is on record to say, what do you want me to do? And as a general, when you are in a war, when you make such a declaration, it's really a disaster. That was unfortunate for me. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That statement the president made, mnataka nifanye nini?
Oh, I actually resonate with that statement completely. I do. And if I look at it contextually, the many things that were happening in the country at that particular point in time, it pointed to something that I think many Kenyans are not aware of. We look at the presidency from the historical perspective of other presidents. This presidency is by far the uniquest, there's such a term, the most unique presidency we've ever had. And this presidency, if I may use the word shackled, hampered, hindered, guided, the powers that other presidents have had, this particular president or presidency doesn't have.
Okay.
Doesn't. And there are very many norms within the Constitution that these presidents must adhere to. And there are many people the president has to consult. Other presidents didn't need to consult. They decided, a decision was made, it was operationalized, and life went on. So I'm merely touching the surface of it. If you are to judge this president and this presidency accurately, then you must give it the correct perspective.
You've got to look at it from that perspective.
Yes, you must.
That the powers of this president are not the same powers that Mwai Kibaki had even before 2010.
No, it's not.
And the statement that he made at that point, mnataka nifanye nini, it was basically in State House, and they were having this conversation about the fight against corruption. They were preceded by the words where he was expressing his frustration.
Yes.
I have received information, a dossier from the EACC. I have taken personal action on what I can do.
Yes.
The most I can do is dismiss people from office.
Ask them to go home.
That is what
because
he
these
can
are people
do.
that I have appointed, so I'm the appointing authority. I can remove them from office. Others who are employees of the Public Service Commission, I cannot touch. The only people that I can touch are those that I have employed, and those I took action against. Since then, they went to court. The matter is in court. What do you want me to do? What more can I do?
They thought, the thinking with Kenya is that he should have ordered the courts to take this action, ordered so and so, ordered. He can't.
He can't.
He can't. The judiciary is independent. Some of these officers have tenure of service. That's why I said shackled. There is a limit to what the president can do. Limit. Absolute limit.
And I think also expectations then need to be buffered with information, because you know what, if you have the wrong information of what somebody then would be able to do, because look, you would think that in 2020 that people have a different understanding, but the truth of the matter is that once somebody becomes president, this individual in the minds of very many people is all powerful, all executive, and there's nothing that doesn't fall within his there is nothing that he doesn't have access to. This is the president in the minds of many people. So the expectation then is that certain things would happen. So can you imagine then for them how far removed what you're saying then becomes for them? That what do you mean that you cannot order somebody then to go to jail if they have been if they've put their hands in the cookie jar?
Well, he's also been accused of trying to claw back into those powers. To get those powers.
Most recently, yes.
Oh, yes. He's been accused many times, even from the very beginning. Those that say, one of the reasons why devolution is not working as it should is because those in national government, the centralists, do not want to let go of their power. William Indiani, good morning.
Morning to you guys. I hope you're doing well.
We are doing
well, thank you.
You still refuse to give us how we can contribute financially to your show. We said... remember the last conversation we had?
Yes, the boss is listening. They're working on if they come up with an idea.
We need to finance and shape opinion.
Very good.
Through such programs.
Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a contribution on COVID and the gentleman you had in discussion between 8 and 9.
Yep.
And there's a point I wanted to make. Well, around 17 days ago, we had a talk with my friends, and they were like, this thing this COVID, we are thinking we're taking at a wrong approach. And there's these parents normally do these chickenpox parties. You know where a kid is infected with chickenpox and they expose their kids to it so that they get infected and they just pass through that phase.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were like, I mean, as a joke, what if we took such an approach? And so me and my two friends, we exposed ourselves to COVID, and we got infected. I actually turned positive around 16 days ago. It was not really, for me, I did not get it to that point where I needed maybe oxygen support and to be intubated. But I mean, it was very harsh on me, but I'm glad I went through it. And the experience is not as scary as it's being touted on media and the way it's being portrayed. And the reality to it from our father, I mean, when you talking about it, is that at the end of the day, almost 60% of the Kenyan population will be infected. Okay, and how we are packaging the information about COVID is what that is creating all these the fear and.
But my brother, your perspective, I think, is correct based on your lived experience, which is really a mild form of how this particular virus affects people. Now, those who have the extreme form of it, where your entire breathing apparatus in your body is affected and you can't breathe and you can't do very much, it's a totally different experience, actually.
We were responsible in how we went about it. First of all, we were three, and our average age was around 32. Okay, and we are very healthy, active young guys, very sober. Okay, and for us, it was a social experiment because this is not like HIV. Okay,
so
it's
William,
that you can,
how many were you?
We were three.
So three people came together and they said, "Let's get this COVID. Let's
get this COVID." The whole principle of herd immunity, the whole principle of boosting your plasma, by having a plasma that has a rhesus factor, positive rhesus factor for COVID, and the fact that then you improve your threshold for infection and transmission.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were very responsible for it. Okay, so like for me, for the last 16 days, I've been locked up in a villa. The only incident I had is I went cycling and I fell, and of course I had to sort myself because I couldn't even go to a hospital.
So you placed yourself in isolation.
I placed myself in an isolation. I was not in contact with any person.
What guarantees did you have before you got yourself contracted with COVID that you would get mild or zero symptoms?
So there were certain aspects that we looked at. And even the three friends, because the discussion, it was a larger discussion, but the three of us decided to go ahead with it. One, we are very physically, we belong to a cycling club. Okay. And we are very very active. I do a bit of surfing, and I in a day I cycle like around 60 to 80 kilometers. And the advantage is that we could put ourselves into isolation, and we had the resources to put ourselves in isolation and go through it without treatment. But of course, we had medication to sort because like for me, I suffered a lot of these heat waves. I was having a lot of like early mornings and around 11 to midnight. I would have a lot of like heat flash. Okay, and had actually what I felt was like a mild pneumonia because I had muscle pain and joint pain and flashes, and of course I took something for that.
I think
I went through it.
You are raising a very interesting conversation, William, and this is something a conversation that, if you don't mind, we'd like to have this conversation properly. Also having input from other medical professionals who can come in and say, I mean, what are the advantages or what are the disadvantages of this kind of approach? So this is a good conversation. Thank you very much for calling in. We are coming to the end of the show. We will get in touch with you so that we can bring this conversation to the fore once again properly.
Sawa, you guys have my number?
Yes, we do.
I wish you a lovely day.
Asante sana, William. Have a good one, Indiani. This is we must have this conversation and see. I mean, what he's raising is a debate that he wants to have in the public domain. Let's get the responses for it. Coming to the end of the show, today's proverb.
The sun does not forget a village because it is small. You know, if you look at the role of the sun and what significance it has had for mankind, I think this saying is appropriate.
It's for everybody.
It doesn't discriminate.
Everybody can get it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the Situation Room on Spice FM, and also will be on KTN Home from 7 to 9. See you again tomorrow. It's now 10 o'clock. Goodbye.